Chapter 2192. And Lin was on the verge of tears at the sight of Tina's adorable and innocent expression, and he really couldn't bear to tell her the truth. The dishes that Tina was referring to, such as roasted spiders and wild sandrats, were definitely some of the most ghastly dishes on the Tai Chu continent. Giant and Lin, there are many more interesting things to explore in the Divine Mirror world. Let's go for a stroll. Tina latched onto Lin's hand with an excited expression. Lin had been to so many places, but he really hadn't seen anything interesting or fun. Of course, if Tina could say that riding a black pig was fun, then there were indeed a lot of things to play with in this world. At the very least, there were a lot of strange creatures that could be kept as pets for fun. Giant and Lin, we can go to the heavenly white jade rock to see the spectacular scene of vital energy being compressed into a rainbow rain. We can go to the purple sand basin to see the battle of the century between billions of ants and purple crystal sandworms. We can also go to the Snake Rock Peak to see the peculiar scene of sandstorms being blasted into colorful sandstorms by divine lightning. Tina introduced all the beautiful sceneries in the world as if she was counting her family treasures. She even knew where to stand and which angle to view the scenery from. God knew how many times she had seen those sceneries. And Lin felt more and more guilty as he listened. "Little Na, let's go out, okay?" And Lin suddenly suggested. "Go out? Where are we going?" Tina stared at Lin with a confused expression. "To the world that I live in, the Tai Chu continent," Lin replied with a serious expression. Tina's eyelids trembled slightly. "The world that Giant and Lin lives in? But I've lived here for so long. This world is where I was born and raised. I have many fun places here, and we can have a lot of fun here. We don't necessarily have to go to the Tai Chu continent." The young fairy maiden looked at the man before her, as if she was trying to salvage something from him. And Lin could empathize with Tina's current emotions. This was the place where she had lived for countless years. No matter how harsh the environment was, even if there were all sorts of flaws and shortcomings, it was still very meaningful to her. "Little Na, I'm not asking you to leave this place forever. I just want to take you to the Tai Chu continent to have some fun. It's like a vacation, understand?" And Lin spoke in a gentle voice. "There are many fun places to visit on the Tai Chu continent. The celestial court has boundless rainbow clouds to look at, the creation realm has all types of strange-looking living beings to broaden your horizons, the spirit lake realm has many extremely comfortable hot springs, the southern heavenly wing nation has all types of divine and immortal trees that reach into the clouds, and the realm of the fallen phoenix has a boundless grassland with blue skies and green grass." Tina was initially reluctant, but as she heard a series of new terms and things that she had never heard of before, her initially reluctant eyes gradually lit up, revealing a burning curiosity and thirst for knowledge. And Lin calmed down a little when he saw the elf girl's reaction. No matter what Tina had been through, she was still the same little Na that craved new things and loved to experience different things. "Really? Is everything you're saying true? Are there really so many fun things to see on the Tai Chu continent? You're not lying to me, are you?" Tina was a little uneasy. And Lin bent down and looked into Tina's bright eyes. He even poked her delicate cheek with a smile. "Of course it's true. You're my best friend. Why would I lie to you?" He extended a hand toward Tina. "Little Na," the light of the setting sun shone down upon the two of them. The light of the setting sun made Lin's figure appear particularly warm and warm. "Come with me. I promised you that I would take you to see the most beautiful scenery in this world. This promise is valid forever. To see the most beautiful scenery in this world." Tina's heart jolted as she looked at the man before her. All of the memories that had been sealed away in her mind suddenly exploded, crashing into her consciousness like a tidal wave. That one sentence was an opportunity. It passed through boundless space and time before overlapping in that instant. "Giant and Lin, I'm back. Phew! Such fresh air, let me tell you, I'm already at the Tao integration pinnacle stage. I can even help in a battle against a heavenly god or a paramount heavenly god. Dabai, little Tian, little Gu, big sister Hong, what's with your expressions? Where is Giant and Lin? The atmosphere became extremely heavy. Lil Tian didn't say any idioms, curled up on the ground with an autistic face and didn't say a word. Dabai's tears were streaming down his face. Little Gu hung her head. Little Hong looked up into the sky. Master! He's already dead and the battle is over. What are you talking about? The smile on Tina's face instantly disappeared as she stared at her friends with astonishment etched on her face. Big Brother and was surrounded by the 4 paramount heavenly gods, and he used his final life sacrifice to defeat the 4 paramount heavenly gods, but his own life was also erased. The power of darkness returned to the heavenly Tao and became an inanimate object. In the end, Nuwa mended the heavens. It's over, it's all over. Master has left us forever. Each and every word was like a blade stabbing into the fairy's heart, making her vision blur with pain. Tina shook her head relentlessly, and her eyes seemed to have lost all of their luster for the first time. No. Impossible. How could Giant and Lin die? I don't believe this. This is absolutely impossible. Little Na, haven't you noticed? The beast pet contract between you and Master has already disappeared, Little Gu sobbed. Tina's features instantly turned extremely pale. He promised me that he would take me to see all of the beautiful sights in this world. He hasn't even fulfilled that promise, so how could he abandon me? How could he leave me, liar? You big liar. The fairy wore a flowery dress and sat alone on the summit of the full moon mountain. She looked at the moon rising and setting, as well as the spring flowers and winter snow. She looked up into the sky as the darkness merged into the heavenly Tao. She didn't think that things would end up like this. She didn't expect that the hurried departure, the brief departure without any warning, would suddenly become an eternal farewell. After the tribulation, hope reignited in the world. All things began to recover, and a series of new legends were born. However, Unlin was the only legend that no one could surpass. The 4-9 Immortal sect was still the most dazzling and powerful force on the Tai Chu continent. In fact, it was the #1 holy land for countless prodigies on the entire Tai Chu continent. However, the Realm Pavilion Lord seemed to have been a legend forever. Only the members of the 4-9 Immortal sect knew that there was a fairy who had been looking up into the sky on the full moon mountain every day for a very, very long time. Hey, Giant and Lin, you've only become the heavenly Tao, right? There must be a way to save you, right? I'm also the heavenly Tao, and I'm also a god of creation. If I can exist as a living being, then you can too, right? I don't have the ability to interfere with the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent right now as my rank is too low. But what if the heavenly Tao of the divine mirror world is more powerful than the Tai Chu continent? I can do it, I can definitely do it. No matter what price I have to pay, no matter how long it takes, I'll make you appear before me again. I won't give up. Wait for me, Giant and Lin. Chapter 2193. Within the 4-9 Immortal sect, the prodigies from all of the tribes suddenly began to discuss spiritedly among themselves. Did you hear? I heard that pavilion leader Tina is no longer at the full moon mountain. Really? What happened? Crap. Is she going to be like sect leader Su Xiaolan and try to forcibly break through the barrier of the universe and split the heavenly Tao again? Even the god of creation stage sect leader was sealed away by Pangu. Pavilion leader Tina is still too weak. There's no way she would do something like that. Also, hasn't Pavilion leader Bai already predicted that there's no chance of success? Sect leader and Lin's life has already been wiped away. That accursed Pangu. I'm going to beat him to death one day. Brother, don't just drink, eat more. Within the 4-9 Immortal sect, within the Blood Pavilion, a beautiful fairy who had shrunk to the size of a human was appraising the members of the Blood Pavilion with a calm expression. I can sense the aura of Giant and Lin in your blood. This is because we once sucked Master's blood, which is why his aura remains. What is Pavilion Leader Tina trying to do? I want to drink your blood. A Pavilion Leader Tina, even though our blood contains Master's aura, our slave contracts with Master have already been completely nullified. Our blood is completely useless to you. This is the only aura left behind by Giant and Lin. I need him. I need to sense his aura so that I can find him again, please. Tina bowed her head as she pleaded with the members of the Blood Pavilion. The members of the Blood Pavilion looked at one another. So much time had passed, and even sect leader Su Xiaolan had been sealed away. Was Pavilion Leader Tina still not giving up? She was clearly a goddess of creation, but she was begging them in a humble manner. All right. We'll help you no matter what. Pavilion Leader Tina is asking for our blood. How could we refuse? Come on, you can draw as many as you want. The more the better, Tina replied. No problem. The pavilion leaders and members of the Blood Pavilion replied in unison. The next day, a dozen or so members of the Blood Pavilion were sent to the emergency room of the Purple Star Pavilion due to excessive blood loss. Tina, the pavilion master of the Realm Pavilion, announced that she would be in seclusion indefinitely. She entered the Divine Mirror World and began to develop the Divine Mirror World with all her heart and soul, constantly improving and perfecting the Divine Mirror Heavenly Tao. The elf-like goddess stood at the top of the world and looked down on all living beings. The red pendant on her neck suddenly emitted a strange red light. His eyes, which were filled with divinity, became extremely firm. Giant and Lin, it doesn't matter if it's 100 years, 10,000 years, or 1,000,000 years. I will find you and bring you back. She caressed the red pendant and slowly merged it into her heart. And Lin's aura merged with hers at that moment, as if they had never been separated. She was still connected to Lin by blood. As long as Lin called out to her, she would be able to sense it. The elf lady's figure gradually disappeared into the sandstorm. Cultivation and civilization in the Divine Mirror World were progressing at a rapid rate. Several years later, the entire Tai Chu continent was stunned by a feat of splitting open the sky. The 4-9 Immortal sect had gained another god of creation. However, this god of creation was extremely low-key, and after splitting open the sky, she disappeared without a trace and completely ignored the affairs of this world. She still had a wish that she had yet to fulfill. This was a wish that she had to fulfill no matter how many years passed. For the sake of that wish, she was willing to give up on everything else. Time continued to pass by. The legend of Lin had already become an ancient legend. After what seemed like an eternity, another change occurred in the sky above the Tai Chu continent. A dark brown spatial rift tore through the heavens, slicing the entire sky in half. The great Tao of heaven and earth of the Tai Chu continent began to tremor at the same time, as if it were facing some kind of challenge. Immediately afterward, a crisp and heavenly voice spread to every corner of the world and even entered the heavenly Tao through a peculiar method. Giant and Lin, are you there? I'm here to pick you up. Little Na is here to pick you up. Please come out. Little Na has already found the heavenly Tao of darkness that can replace you. It won't harm this world or any living beings. As long as you can separate yourself from this world, Little Na will be able to end all of this. I beg of you, please come back. The woman pleaded relentlessly as an extremely terrifying heavenly Tao fused into the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent, as if it was searching for something. However, the heavenly Tao had no response other than rage. Tina had already discovered that the Tai Chu continent was unsurpassable. The heavenly Tao that she wielded was only infinitely close to the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent, but it was unable to surpass it. This was the law of the universe, as well as the ultimate law of Tao. Tina was in despair upon discovering this, but she refused to give up. She firmly believed that there had to be a way for Lin to come back. Tina was using her own heavenly Tao to analyze the heavenly Tao of the Tai Chu continent in an attempt to find a way out. She firmly believed that she could change everything. Giant and Lin, please come back. Little Na has been waiting for you for a long, long time. The fairy goddess of creation was like a helpless little girl pleading with Lin. She endured the backlash of the heavenly Tao and endured unimaginable pain as she analyzed the situation in a frenzy. Finally, amidst her despair and confusion, she saw a glimmer of light. She was looking into the darkness, but within the darkness, she discovered the only light. She traced the light and saw time. The power of time, the power of darkness. Time. Heavenly Tao, she murmured to herself as something exploded in her mind. The probability of this happening was infinitely close to zero. Ever since Pangu separated heaven and earth, no one had ever done something like this. However, just because no one had done it didn't mean that it was destined to fail. Tina only hesitated for a split second before rushing toward the glimmer of light without any hesitation. Heaven and earth spun around her, and she saw a river. This was a river that contained all of the most evil things in this world. The flow of time here was different. Tina saw another river hidden within this river. This river was an extension of the Tao. It was a place of despair for all things in this world, as it was something from another dimension. This was the river of time. The true river of time. No matter what Tina was in this dimension, it would be annihilated upon reaching that unique dimension of time. But was this really absolute? The young elven woman at the pinnacle of the Tao pursed her lips as she looked at the surging river and recalled all of her memories with that man. At this moment, she was all alone. There was no existence in this world that could stand by her side. If she were to step into the river of time, there was a chance that she would fall into eternal loneliness. However, so much time had passed, but the memories of her time with Lin were still so clear and unforgettable to her. You once said you were going to take me to see all of the beautiful scenes in this world. The world is very beautiful right now, but what's the point of me seeing all of those beautiful scenes without you around? Tina's expression was firm as she made her way toward the hidden river of time. I've only risked my life for you in my entire life. Hence, Giant and Lin, either we die together, or we meet again in the river of time. Even if I return to the past, even if the world becomes a wasteland, even if I lose all of my cultivation base, even if I lose everything, I believe that after countless years of waiting and searching, we'll definitely meet again. When that time comes, I'll change everything. And I'll slap you in the face. The light of the setting sun shone down on their faces. The young elven woman suddenly burst into tears. Her tears fell like drops of golden jade under the light of the setting sun. And Lin was given a fright. Little Na, what's wrong? What happened? I'm fine. Nothing happened. Tina shook her head as she wiped away her tears. Are you really fine? And Lin was completely unconvinced, and he reached out to wipe away her tears. Slap! A scorching slap landed mercilessly on Lin's face. The palm print was particularly red under the setting sun. Why did you hit me? Because I like it. Chapter 2194. Because you like me? And Lin was dumbstruck. You can hit me just because you like me? You can do whatever you want? Tina faltered slightly upon hearing this before bursting into laughter. That's right, I can do whatever I want. Are you going to retaliate, Giant and Lin? And Lin was struck by an indescribable sense of heartache as he looked at the tear-stained young woman. So be it. Seeing as you're so adorable, I'll forgive you for now. Really? Then I want to slap you a few more times. After all, this is a great opportunity for forgiveness, so I have to cherish it. Tina chuckled as she raised her slender, jade-like hand again. And Lin instantly panicked. My adorable and kind little Nachan, please spare me. You can only forgive me once a day at most. Tina didn't pursue the matter any further and nodded obediently with her hands clasped behind her back. Little Na, are you really alright? Unlin asked with a concerned expression. I'm really fine. Otherwise, you can examine me with your divine sense, Tina replied. There's no need for that. Let's find a way to go back. I have to find a way to help you recover your memories and revitalize the divine mirror world. Unlin patted his chest. Tina nodded lightly as she stared at Unlin with her beautiful eyes. Giant Unlin, before we go back, can I make a small request? Unlin replied with a straightforward expression, I can even make a huge request. That is, before we leave the divine mirror world, can you give me a hug? Tina asked in a quiet voice. Unlin faltered slightly upon hearing this. What kind of request was this? He naturally wasn't going to refuse such a request. He pulled the young fairy into his arms and basked in the familiar warmth and the refreshing scent of the forest. Tina also extended her arms and hugged the man before her tightly, a rare sight to behold. Giant Unlin, I'm super happy right now. Me too. I feel super blessed. Me too. Just like that, the two of them embraced each other in the boundless desert. The red sun, the glow of the sunset, and the sand that was swirling in the wind made the moment when the two of them embraced each other so beautiful that it was like an eternal painting that had experienced countless years and transcended time and space. By the way, little Na, can you teleport back to the Tai Chu continent now? Unlin was a little concerned. Of course you can. Last time, I instinctively crossed over and followed your aura. Now that I have experience and know the coordinates, I can directly cross over. You sound so professional. Do you really have no concept of the creation authority? I've remembered something. I have a rough idea. What did you think of? Unlin asked excitedly. I'll tell you later, let's go back now. Tina urged. The elf maiden immediately drew a line with her fingertip, and a square-shaped gate of the two realms appeared in front of Unlin without hesitation. The gate shimmered with a golden light, and a vast and boundless aura emanated from within. This was none other than the aura of the Tai Chu continent. Tina was a little disconsolate, but a smile appeared on her face in the end. Let's go, Giant Unlin. All right, let's go home. Unlin stepped into the gate of the two realms first, and the two of them made their way through the gate. After a rush of dizziness, the scenery of the Tai Chu continent reappeared before their eyes. Unlin appeared on the continent near the White Nectar Sea. This was the place that Tina had dragged him into. This was a very easy place to locate, and Tina only had to do a few simple things to do. He was immediately dumbstruck by the scenes that unfolded before his eyes. The earth was cracked open, and rocks were surging. There was not a single place in this vast expanse of land that was left intact. Even the White Nectar Sea at the center of the Tai Chu continent had been transformed from a round sea into a flower petal. Countless rivers of white seawater flowed toward the continent, and the sea level plummeted at a rapid rate. Even the landscape had been altered by the battle that had just taken place. The heavens had been shattered, and countless spatial rifts imbued with the power of great annihilation flowed out from within. All things that came into contact with those spatial rifts would be annihilated regardless of what they were. This had become a perilous realm that no one dared to approach. Is the battle over? I can't sense any more clashes. Unlin turned toward Yutong City to find that it was still intact, and he heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing this. Thankfully, the battle didn't spread to Yutong City, and that was something to be happy about. Let's go there and find out what happened. That was what Unlin was thinking, until he saw a streak of azure light hurtling toward him with a familiar aura. Xiaolan! Unlin spread open his arms with elation and welcomed her into his embrace. Slap! An overwhelming force suddenly crashed into his face. Boom! Unlin was slapped, flying for tens of thousands of meters. Tina's mouth gaped open in shock. Su Xiaolan stared at Unlin with tears in her eyes. It's like this again. It's like this every time. Why do you always have to face danger by yourself? Can't you let me stand with you? I won't be afraid even if I die. Unlin was a little dumbstruck. He rubbed his swollen face. What had he done to his face recently? He kept getting slapped. I'm sorry, I had no choice. Nuwa was only willing to save you, not me. One of us has to escape. Unlin made his way towards Su Xiaolan with a sincere expression. Su Xiaolan was so enraged that she wanted to slap Unlin again. However, her hand stopped in midair, and she looked at Unlin with tears in her eyes. Don't you understand? I'd rather die with you than leave you when you're in danger. Why don't you understand? Why don't you understand? Su Xiaolan had always been a goddess who stood high and mighty in the eyes of the world, but now she was sobbing and complaining. Unlin looked at the green-robed female before him with complex emotions in his heart. How could he not understand what Su Xiaolan was thinking? It was just that understanding was one thing, and how he was going to do it was another. He could let Xiaolan take the risk with him, but he couldn't let her die in front of him. Unlin didn't know how to comfort the woman before him, so he could only hold her tightly in his arms, feeling each other's warmth and heartbeat. Tina stared at the two of them embracing before her, and ripples appeared in her clear, gem-like eyes. She was a little dazed and a little dazed. In the end, an extremely moving smile appeared on her face. The direction of the world had been successfully changed. She saw a different future. She still had to work hard from now on. She had to work hard to give the world a perfect ending. Chapter 2195. Little Na, I heard from them that you were the one who saved Enlin at the most critical moment. Thank you very much. Su Xiaolan looked at Tina with gratitude in her eyes. Giant Enlin is my master, so it's only my duty. Tina transformed into her little fairy form and sat on Enlin's shoulder with a wide grin. Su Xiaolan was genuinely elated to see Tina. Little Na, has your divine mirror world evolved successfully? What cultivation base are you at now? Why can't I detect your cultivation base? Su Xiaolan asked. Well, I can barely be considered a god of creation stage cultivator, but I'm a bit lacking in power, so I can only be considered a fake god of creation stage cultivator. Tina scratched her head with a smile. Even Su Xiaolan couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath upon hearing this. Her voice trembled as she said, What did you say? You're already a god of creation stage cultivator? Tina had progressed from the Return to Void Pinnacle stage to the God of Creation stage in just 1 year? What kind of joke was this? Little Na's situation is a bit special. She experienced something very special in the Divine Mirror world, and she's currently suffering from amnesia. Enlin explained, By the way, Little Na, let me introduce to you Su Xiaolan, my Dao partner. Don't worry, Giant Enlin. My memories are slowly recovering, and I still remember Big Sister Su Xiaolan. Tina extended a dainty smile towards Su Xiaolan. Su Xiaolan felt like what had happened to Tina had completely flipped her world upside down. She asked about Tina's condition with concern in her eyes, and even used her essential power to examine Tina's body, acting like a big sister who was concerned about her little sister. Unfortunately, she couldn't figure out what was going on, so the three of them could only return to Yutong City. News of Enlin's return spread throughout Yutong City, and all of the living beings in the city came out to give him a warm welcome. All of the soldiers were moved to tears. They knew that Enlin had been rescued, but Enlin's return still created an unimaginable tidal wave. Welcome back, Your Majesty! Enlin, God of War, will never be defeated, his brilliance unparalleled. The experts shouted excitedly. Over 100 million creatures came out of the city to welcome them. This was simply too great, and the scene was extremely spectacular. At a glance, there were warriors of various races, and there was no end in sight. They lined up in an orderly fashion, bowing, raising their hands in the air and cheering. Enlin was already at ease in the face of such a scene. He began to wave back to his comrades who welcomed him. Although he could handle such a situation, it didn't mean that he didn't feel anything. On the contrary, he was extremely touched. Wasn't the adoration and love of these comrades an affirmation of what he had done? A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. This saying could be applied to Enlil as well. Even after his identity was exposed and it was confirmed that he was a heavenly darkness god, these living beings still firmly chose to stand with him. They still trusted him and even revered him as their supreme commander. Enlil knew in that instant that it was worth it to risk his life for them. Enlil's return made Yutong City revel in celebration. The battling Buddha, Michael, Demon Lord Lingu, and the others all hugged Enlil with excitement. All of them were extremely moved by the battle that had just taken place, and they almost wanted to wash their faces with tears. Thankfully, Tina had pulled off a miracle and successfully rescued Enlil. It was exactly because of this that Tina's name became renowned across the entire continent. Being able to rescue Enlil right under the noses of the four paramount heavenly gods was a feat that defied the natural order. His strength had been highly praised by some mighty figures, and in the end, all of them could be summed up with the phrase, unfathomable. After Enlil returned to Yutong City, the members of the God of Destruction team reported to him what had happened, and he finally understood what had happened. The four paramount heavenly gods were extremely enraged after failing to kill Enlil. However, they didn't vent their anger on Yutong City. Instead, they directed their anger at the Heavenly Light Goddess. The Heavenly Light Goddess had no choice but to run away. The three paramount heavenly gods had no choice but to give chase. The four paramount heavenly gods fought as they fled. With the Heavenly Light Goddess powers, there was no way that she could escape from the three paramount heavenly gods. However, at this critical juncture, the Heavenly Light Goddess issued an absolute command, and close to half of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army rebelled. That's right, the Heavenly Human Tribe and the Heavenly Gods, who had once been loyal to the Heavenly Earth God, had suddenly turned their attention to the three paramount Heavenly Gods. Moreover, they had self-detonated in order to buy time for the Heavenly Light God. Even the self-detonation of Heavenly Gods wouldn't be able to buy time. However, there were tens of millions of Heavenly Human Tribe United Army at the time. Such a massive number of Heavenly Human Tribe United Army detonated at the same time, and this was not even taking into account the fact that there were three heavenly gods participating in the self-detonation. The Heavenly Temperature God, the Heavenly Slaughter God, and the Heavenly Solitary Star God had all died for the sake of light. In that instant, the entire sky above the Tai-Chu continent seemed to have been filled with the power of the self-detonation of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and Heavenly Gods. This was an extremely spectacular and tragic scene, and even the heaven-crushing United Army was struck by a sense of awe and veneration toward the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. The fact that they were willing to sacrifice themselves for the Heavenly Light Goddess showed just how powerful these Heavenly Human Tribe United Army really were. It was exactly because of the sudden arrival of the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army and their self-detonation that the three paramount heavenly gods were severely hampered. The Heavenly Light Goddess found an opening, and she unleashed her heavenly light power to the extreme to break free from the three paramount heavenly gods. The three paramount heavenly gods had failed again. They were extremely enraged, and they wanted to attack Yutong City to vent their anger. However, their true forms of Tao had been used for too long, and they were beginning to revert back to normal paramount heavenly gods. Normally, even normal paramount heavenly gods would have been more than enough to destroy Yutong City. However, Nuwa teleported Su Xiaolan to Yutong City. Demon Emperor Yu was able to unleash his God of Creation stage power for a short period of time, and even the Heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue had appeared above Yutong City. If a battle were to break out, the outcome would be very difficult to predict. The three paramount heavenly gods had already been dealt a heavy blow, and they decided to give up and return to the White Nectar Sea. To put it more accurately, they had become a little autistic, and they set up a spell formation and refused to come out. The central heavenly gate had collapsed, the world tree had been severed, The three-phase true heavenly reincarnation formation had been foiled, and the living world had been destroyed. The two true forms of Tao had been forced out of their bodies, and they had suffered a devastating blow. And the result? They had unleashed their true forms of Tao, but even the heavenly light goddess was unable to escape, and they couldn't even kill Enlin and Su Xiaolan. In the end, they couldn't even take down Yutong City. They had unleashed their ultimate forms, but they had achieved nothing. If they weren't autistic, who was? Chapter 2196. At the center of the White Nectar Sea, at the summit of the Divine Tree, the three paramount heavenly gods looked up at the sky with melancholy expressions. The heavenly sea god had transformed into a little water person, the heavenly heaven god had transformed into a little white person, and the heavenly life goddess had transformed into a little green woman. Enlin has returned to Yutong City, the heavenly heaven god suddenly said. The little water person and the little green person shuddered upon hearing this. We've lost, the heavenly life goddess murmured. Enlin must be very happy right now. He forced two of our paramount heavenly gods to reveal their true Tao without suffering a single casualty, ruined our plan, destroyed our world, and forced tens of millions of heavenly human tribe powerful beings to self-detonate. The faces of the other two paramount heavenly gods convulsed with every sentence the heavenly sea god spoke. It was as if every sentence he uttered was throwing knives into their hearts. By the way, I have some good news. The heavenly earth god suddenly changed the subject. What good news? The heavenly heaven god asked. The two heavenly disciples of the heaven-crushing sect unleashed a barrage of cannons while the heavenly light goddess was away from the eastern heavenly gate. The heavenly human tribe united army suffered over 10 million casualties, and half of the eastern heavenly gate has also been destroyed. The heavenly earth god said. The heavenly heaven god. A wry smile appeared on the heavenly life goddess' face. Have we fallen so low that we have to use these trivial matters to console our wounded hearts? When these words came out, the supreme heavenly deities didn't say anything again. All of them were quite autistic. The heavenly sea god was the most distressed. He still had a target that no one knew about, but he felt like he was getting further and further away from that target. If he wanted to kill all of the other paramount heavenly gods, then he would have to bring all of them to the same level. The plan to use the golden trident to force out the heavenly heaven god's true form of Tao was going very smoothly. However, the plan to force out the true form of the heavenly light god's true form of divine Tao was foiled by the sudden appearance of Enlin. However, at that time, he was extremely quick-witted and immediately changed his battle strategy. He wanted to use Enlin's life sacrifice to drastically increase his power and force the heavenly light goddess and heavenly life goddess to reveal their Tao forms. This would not only deal a blow to Enlin, but it would also deal a blow to the other two supreme heavenly gods. It could be said to be killing three birds with one stone. Who would have thought that the divine phoenix maiden would appear? Who would have thought that Nuwa would appear? Who would have thought that there would be a terrifyingly powerful god of creation stage fairy hiding in the shadows? The tides of the battle turned in an instant. Enlin had disappeared, and the heavenly light goddess had escaped. Failure. All the plans had failed. The heavenly sea god had never been this close to success. He had never been that far from success. Right now, he could not think of a way to turn the situation around. He felt like he could only lie on the divine tree and wait for death. The heavenly light goddess was already this powerful without even using her true Tao form. Furthermore, she wasn't even in her complete transformation state. Once she completed her transformation, wouldn't she be able to beat the three of them up? Life, can the three true heavenly reincarnation formations still be usable? The heavenly heaven god asked. The essence of the immeasurable flower has been severely damaged. I'm trying my best to recover its effects, but no matter how much I try, it's no longer as powerful as it was at its peak. Under normal circumstances, even if we use the formation, We'll only be slightly more powerful than the heavenly light goddess. However, we definitely won't be able to defeat her after she uses her true Tao form, the heavenly life goddess said in a forlorn voice. Don't we have the buff state? We can inject our true Tao form into the formation, the heavenly sea god said in an urgent voice. The heavenly life goddess glowered at the two heavenly gods before her with an even more resentful expression. See, you have the cheek to use your true Tao form? See, don't you still have your true Tao form? The heavenly heaven god asked. The three of us will only be invincible if we activate the formation and unleash our true Tao form at the same time. If I use it alone, we might still have a chance against the heavenly light goddess, who hasn't completed her transformation yet. However, once she completes her transformation and unleashes her true Tao form, our chances of winning will be extremely slim, the heavenly life goddess said. The heavenly heaven god and the heavenly sea god collapsed onto the tree again upon hearing this. This was too difficult. They had clearly been dealt a good hand, but they had completely trashed it. We can only go from being proactive to passive. Hopefully, Unlin and the heavenly light goddess will both be severely wounded so that we can take advantage of the situation. The heavenly life goddess heaved a forlorn sigh. The three paramount heavenly gods continued to look up into the sky as they heaved forlorn sighs. At this point, news of Unlin's return had already spread throughout the entire Tai Chu continent. Billions of living beings began to celebrate as if they were celebrating a festival. The battle between the five paramount heavenly gods had a profound impact on the entire Tai Chu continent. Of course, this was definitely a very positive impact for the heaven-crushing United Army. To them, the darkest period had already passed. They could already see the light of victory. Reality had proven that enemies who appeared to be invincible could also be defeated. The powerful beings of the Tai Chu continent were able to unleash their limitless potential in dire straits and create miracles in the face of the impossible. Some neutral powers were beginning to waver. Some powerful beings from opposing powers were even trying to find a way out of fear and trepidation. They were even trying to sound out Enlin and the others to see if they would accept them if they surrendered. The most interesting ones were the Blood Tribe Emperor Fu Tian and Emperor Mang's probing attempts. They clearly had a vendetta against the Blood Tribe, but these two emperors were trying to get in touch with Enlin and even tried to express their special friendship with the Blood Pavilion. Enlin naturally remained silent in the face of this series of attempts to test the waters and express goodwill. He didn't object, nor did he agree. His intentions were very clear. The other party had to do something meaningful in order to express their loyalty. Otherwise, all of this would just be empty talk. After a few battles, an astonishing reversal had already taken place. All of the living beings resisting the heavenly human tribe were no longer in despair. Instead, all of them were filled with fighting spirit, and they wanted to fight the heavenly human tribe to the death. One exceptional prodigy after another rose to prominence during the war, such as Demon Lord Ling Gu of the True Demon Tribe, Demon Emperor Siyu, True Lord Erlang of the Heavenly Court, Moon Goddess Chang Yi, Ice Matriarch Shangguan Yi of the 4-9 Immortal Sect, and Fairy Tina of the 4-9 Immortal Sect. They were like dazzling stars in the sky. Even at night, the starlight they emitted was enough to illuminate the entire earth. Not to mention that the heavenly human tribe also had a son among their rank. That's right, that son was Enlin. He was clearly the heavenly darkness god, but he was believed by countless living beings to be the son of the Tai Chu continent. Wasn't that very interesting? However, that was what all of the living beings thought. They weren't looking at what type of power Enlin possessed. Instead, they were looking at how Enlin did what he did. It was Enlin who disregarded life and death time and time again to create a series of miracles that gave them hope of victory. Hence, Enlin was the son that they worshipped and pursued. It was no exaggeration to say that Enlin's popularity had already reached the pinnacle of the Tai Chu continent. regardless of whether it was the paramount heavenly gods of the heaven-crushing sect or Nuwa of the heaven-mending sect, none of them could compare with him. He was the most dazzling being on the Tai Chu continent. The Tai Chu continent had ushered in a new era in the war against the heavenly human tribe. This was an era that was filled with hope and challenges. Chapter 2197. Ayaya Ayaya. Why are all of these articles praising me? Is there no one who wants to slander me? Unlin looked at the stack of newspapers in front of him. All of the headlines were about him, and all of them were praising him to the heavens. As a result, he was completely unperturbed by the news and the contents of the newspapers. You're the #1 war god of the Tai Chu continent. Who would dare to slander you? Su Xiaolan crossed her long and slender legs with a dainty smile on her face. Anyone who dares to slander you will be drowned by the spit of your 80 billion retarded fans. Unlin was astonished. Are there that many? Tina clicked her tongue in wonder as she looked at the data Bai Ling had sent her, and she clicked her tongue in wonder. That's Big Sister Xiaolan's humble way of putting it. According to my incomplete statistics, you already have over 100 billion fans. Even among the opposing factions, there are many admirers. It's like this. Setting aside the fact that no one on our side will slander you, even among the opposing factions, such as the Dark Marshlands, the Creation Realm, and the Western Dragon Forest, there are very few who dare to slander you. At the very most, they'll use your identity as the heavenly darkness goddess to sow discord and fan the flames. However, no one will believe those reports unless they're idiot. Su Xiaolan was very pleased with the current public opinion. Even though this public opinion couldn't decide the course of the battle, it was still very satisfying to watch. She loved it when people praised her, Unlin. Unlin was even more disconsolate upon hearing this. Was this the kind of life he wanted? No, that wasn't the case. What he needed was for countless people to question him, countless people to oppose him, and then he would rise up powerfully and slap everyone's faces. He would live a happy and pretentious life. What was the point of living such a high and mighty life where he was worshipped by countless people? By the way, didn't the heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue come here to help out? Where is he now? Unlin pondered for a moment before asking curiously. I don't know. He just suddenly appeared and then suddenly left. He didn't communicate with us at all. The only reason he appeared was to force the 3 paramount heavenly gods into retreat, Su Xiaolan said with a regretful expression. Does his appearance mean that he's going to join our heaven-crushing faction? Unlin suddenly felt a little happy. This was a top-tier faction. I don't think so. Su Xiaolan hesitated momentarily before replying. The heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue is a member of the heaven-mending camp. However, ever since you were rescued by Tina, Nuwa and the heavenly Lord of Tao and Virtue's attitude toward our camp has become a little ambiguous. Even though they haven't given up on mending the heavens, they won't be able to stop themselves from helping us destroy the heavens. Listening to Su Xiaolan's words, Unlin suddenly felt a headache. To tell the truth, he didn't dislike Butian and felt that Goddess Nviwa's actions were understandable. However, he couldn't fathom Goddess Nviwa's subsequent change in attitude. Could it be that she was touched by his struggle? Or could it be that Goddess Nviwa's benevolent heart was triggered by the fact that too many living beings were about to perish? So be it, let's not think about this. Little Na, Little Lon and I will accompany you on a tour of Yutong City. This city is very beautiful, and there are many interesting places to visit, Unlin suggested. Alright, I haven't even had a chance to tour this city yet. Tina was very excited. There are many delicacies in this city, I can take you to try them all. Su Xiaolan was also quite excited. She wanted to taste all of the delicacies in order to gain culinary inspiration. Tina's eyes lit up. Long live Big Sister Lon. Then I'll return the favor. Big Sister Lon, take me to some good food, and I'll teach you the secret to creating a world. You can teach me that too. And Lin was astonished. Of course. It's just a hint to help Big Sister Lon avoid taking the wrong path. The most important thing is still the individual's ability to understand things, which can't be taught. Tina patted her little chest with a confident expression. Then I'll be counting on you, little Na. They were all friends, so Su Xiaolan naturally wasn't going to hold back. Leave it to me. Little Na was brimming with confidence and generosity. The secret to creating a world that she had taught Little Lon were all things that Little Lon had summarized for her after creating a world. Which meant that strictly speaking, Little Lon was actually teaching herself. It didn't really have much to do with Tina. However, Tina would make some modifications to the secret to make it easier for Little Lon to understand it and avoid taking the wrong path. As for her ability to understand things, that was even less of a concern. Su Xiaolan definitely had the aptitude to do so. She would be able to quickly progress to the God of Creation stage. Thus, Anlin and Little Lon embarked on a leisurely and joyful life. The Taichu continent seemed to have become peaceful again. Dabai, Little Gu, Little Hong, and Little Tian all called to congratulate Tina upon her return. If it weren't for the fact that the war was still ongoing, they would all want to travel across half of the continent to see the adorable little fairy. On Maple Leaf Avenue, the red maples were like flames, and the fallen leaves danced in the air. Tina placed one crispy spirit corn after another into her mouth as she spoke. Big Sister Xiaolan, if you want to create a world, you have to find the essential power that belongs to you first. Essential power? Su Xiaolan fell into deep thought. That's right. Essential power is the most essential power in this world. It could be said that it is the source of all things, the source of Tao. It is of an extremely high level and is powerful to a certain extent that even the Taichu continent's heavenly Tao is unable to interfere with it. This is also why gods of creation are able to remain calm and collected in the face of the threat of the heavenly Tao. This is because they possess the most essential power in this world, and they can even use this essential power to create the heavenly Tao. Su Xiaolan nodded as she extended a finger, and a crimson holy vermilion flame appeared on her fingertip along with the aura of her holy birth. My vermilion bird power seems to contain the essential power of the vermilion bird after fusing with the power of my holy birth? Tina nodded. That is indeed essential power, but it's not something you've attained on your own. Instead, it's something that you've inherited. Even though you can progress to the God of Creation stage with the essential power of the vermilion bird, it's very difficult to use this kind of inherited essential power to create a world, so? Su Xiaolan's brows perked up slightly. I suggest you attain a completely new type of essential power, Tina suggested. You can try to fuse your vermilion bird and azure dragon divine Tao to create a new type of essential power. This is the Holy Beast Greater Essential Power that can combine the powers of the four holy beasts. Su Xiaolan was stunned by Tina's suggestion. She had considered this path before, but she didn't think that it would be suggested by someone else. This was an audacious, unprecedented, and heaven-defying idea. If she could succeed, she would become a mighty being that transcended above the four holy beasts. All the beasts in the universe would look up to her. Big Sister Xiaolan, don't be in such a hurry to refute me. I can tell you my train of thought, Tina said with an earnest expression. Anlin sat off to the side, munching on a hot dog as he looked at the two beauties chatting animatedly. His heart was filled with an indescribable sense of envy. He really envied the beings who could create a world. He was a trash Tao integration stage cultivator, so he could only watch from the sidelines. Chapter 2198. Su Xiaolan was working hard toward the God of Creation stage, and Lin was trying to figure out how to crush the heavens in a reasonable manner. Meanwhile, Tina was pondering how to restore her divine mirror world. She had entered the river of time and transcended countless years, and she had almost completely expended all of her energy as well as the power of her divine mirror world. Even though she was a top-rate god of creation, she was nothing more than an empty shell now, and she was unable to unleash her full combat prowess. Everyone was running toward their own goals. At a certain top-rate immortal sect countless kilometers away from Yutong City. The 4-9 immortal sect, which had been in the limelight the most during this battle, was also looking to be on the rise. During this period of peace, everyone was cultivating as fast as they could. There was a waterfall behind the full moon mountain that crashed down like a silver dragon. Massive amounts of river water crashed down with the force of over 10,000 tons, sending water mist flying into the air. Just like that, a man with his upper body bare endured the force of the falling waterfall. He meditated for a full day and a night. Gradually, he was unable to hold on any longer, and his body swayed a little. However, he was still persevering, as if he was trying to break through some kind of limit. Boom! Ah! He was blasted flying by the monstrous force of the waterfall before crashing into the river in an extremely disheveled manner. Woof! Woof! Dabai immediately ran over to the man who had fallen into the water and picked him up with his mouth. The man cultivating under the waterfall was none other than the renowned sword immortal Sun Yulua of the 4-9 immortal sect. He was observing the water ghost sword intent, which was why he was cultivating under the waterfall. Thank you, big brother Dabai. Sun Yulua grimaced in pain as he rubbed his neck. Are you all right? Did you hurt your neck? Woof! Dabai stared at Sun Yulua's neck, which was a little red from the force of the waterfall. Sun Yulua twisted his neck from side to side. Maybe my neck is a little tired. Dabai stuck out his tongue with a wide grin. That's easy. I'll teach you a set of exercises for your neck. It'll definitely feel super good. Shake your head like this, lower right, lower left, left and right, up and down, lower left. Sun Yulua looked at Dabai and murmured to himself, that's way too complicated. I can summarize it, Dabai said. How so? Sun Yulua asked. If you have a bad cervical spine, just use your head to write the word sh*t in the sky, Dabai said. Sun Yulua. Thus, on the 4-9 immortal sect's full moon mountain, there was always an inspirational scene of a handsome man training hard under the waterfall. When he was tired, he would point his head at the sky and write sh*t on the plaza of the 4-9 immortal sect. There was a sweet-tempered woman in colorful clothes cooking. Her identity was not ordinary. That was sect leader and Lin's beast pet, Xiao Gu. Her nickname was also Little Kai. Deputy Pavilion Master Xiao Gu's special dish is ready. Disciples who want to try it, hurry up. Don't miss it as you pass by. If you're too slow, you won't get it. A fox demon female with an extremely charming appearance shouted at the top of her voice. There was no need for her to advertise. The small square was already surrounded by a large group of disciples, discussing fervently. What is Xiao Gu cooking for us this time? Are you sure it's good stuff? Last time, I had a kimchi made from virgin urine, and I threw up for an entire day after eating it. Another disciple, Chen Yonglong, spoke in a trembling voice. Her food sounds a little scary, but it really is very effective. Eating that kimchi is equivalent to eating a spirit pill. Another female disciple spoke with a yearning expression. I heard that Brother Lu broke through to the spirit-nurturing intermediate stage after eating the kimchi made from virgin urine. Are you sure you didn't make the breakthrough because you were mentally stimulated? Some of the disciples were very panicked. However, they still couldn't help but make their way over to Xiao Gu. The sinister spirit beast cesspool had all types of dark dishes. Xiao Gu was a mighty figure from the sinister spirit beast cesspool, so it was understandable that her dishes were dark dishes. Even though the dishes were quite scary, they really were beneficial to the body. There were quite a few disciples who said that they didn't want the food, and in just a short while, several hundred core disciples had gathered on the small square. Listen up, everyone. The delicacies this time are limited to 20 portions. Disciples who wish to taste Little Gu Pavilion Master's delicacies can sign up now. We will randomly select 20 lucky disciples to have a taste, the Fox Demon Beauty introduced with a smile. All of the disciples looked at the large pot in front of Xiao Gu, upon which there were pig trotters, which were also soaked in a very viscous red soup. It looked very appetizing. Could it be braised pig trotters? All of the disciples were extremely excited, and all of them rushed to register. Pavilion Master Xiao Gu was able to make such a delicious dish. This was an extremely rare opportunity, and no one wanted to miss this opportunity. Finally, registration ended and the lucky draw began. 20 lucky disciples were selected, and they all cheered excitedly. Among these disciples, there was also Brother Chen Yonglong, who threw up after eating the kimchi made from virgin urine last time. That's right, he was here again. He couldn't help but come. They all eagerly gathered around a large pot, and looked at the pig trotters inside as they swallowed their saliva madly, their eyes shining. At this moment, the girl in the colorful dress, Xiao Gu, smiled faintly and said, "Same old rules, everyone who has been selected must finish all the food in the pot. Don't waste food." All of the disciples agreed loudly, and guaranteed that they would definitely not waste food. Everyone looked at the black pig trotters in the pot, as well as the viscous red liquid, and all felt that it looked very good already. It would definitely be very appetizing. Pavilion Master Xiao Gu, if I may be so bold as to ask, this ingredient? Chen Yonglong asked with some unease. Oh, I almost forgot to introduce. Xiao Gu came back to its senses and said smilingly, "This black pig trotters is the king of the ferocious boars, the pig trotters of the black barbarian boars. They are fresh, tender, and chewy. And this viscous red liquid is the mucus of the red rotten slug that has cultivated for 1,000 years. It can greatly increase the smoothness and freshness of the pig trotters. It also contains extremely high energy, and can relax the tendons and activate the meridians." When everyone heard the introduction of the pig trotters, they felt fine, but when they heard the introduction of the red liquid, their legs instantly turned to jelly. The disciples who had not been selected felt as if they had been revived. The lucky disciples who had been selected all felt as if they had been struck by lightning, and stood dumbfounded on the spot. The mucus of the red rotten slug? Viscous, smooth, and delicious. Could the pig trotters that had been soaked in this kind of mucus really be eaten? Just imagining it, the lucky disciples almost wanted to vomit. A female disciple's legs were even trembling, her eyes brimming with tears. The large pot of pig trotters that everyone had felt greatly increase their appetite before now looked like the black pig trotters, and red liquid was like a demon staring at them. Chen Yonglong revealed an expression of despair, and said, "Pavilion Master Xiao Gu, can I not eat pig trotters? I'm allergic to pig trotters." Xiao Gu said readily, "Sure, you can drink the soup." Chen Yonglong. Chapter 2199. Chen Yonglong's mood was crumbling. What the F***ck was asking him to drink soup. Drinking the snot of a 1,000-year-old rotten slug was better than asking him to die. When the other disciples heard Xiao Gu's words, they couldn't help but cast sympathetic looks at Chen Yonglong. They were only eating pig trotters soaked in snot, but Chen Yonglong was awesome, directly being ordered to eat snot. This was a true warrior. Compared to Chen Yonglong, they suddenly felt that tasting this delicacy didn't seem so miserable after all. Instead, they felt inexplicably comfortable. This was like a person suddenly being forced to drink urine. That would definitely be a nightmare, and they would resist with all their might. But when they saw that everyone else was forced to eat **t, and only they were forced to drink urine, perhaps they would even feel a sense of superiority from drinking it. Chen Yonglong's experience soothed the psychological trauma of some lucky disciples to a certain extent. They began to turn their eyes to the pig trotters in the pot. "The delicacy is ready, you can all enjoy it. Remember not to waste, and finish them all," Xiao Gu said with a smile. She was clearly a very beautiful and gentle girl, But at this moment, her smile was strangely horrifying in the eyes of the disciples. They had already said that they would taste the delicacy, so they could not go back on their word. This was the rule. The disciples could only bite the bullet and do it. Facing the large bowl of soup, Chen Yonglong felt his scalp go numb, his eyes dizzy. "Why can you all eat pig trotters, but I can only drink soup? Because you are allergic to pig trotters," the female disciple at the side said with a grin. Chen Yonglong was speechless. The lucky disciples had already begun to dig in, and began to eat noisily. Chen Yonglong looked at the red viscous liquid, and recalled a famous saying that sect leader Lin had once said. You could not just look at the surface of anything. Some pink and dreamy things could be black when cut open, and some looked extremely ugly, but could contain treasures inside. This saying was extremely meaningful, and contained rich life experience. Actually, it could also be used on the delicacy that Xiao Gu made, right? The black pig trotters looked very delicious, much better than the soup. But perhaps the soup that all the disciples avoided like snakes and scorpions was the most delicious essence? Yes, that's right, it had to be so, this soup was the treasure. Chen Yonglong's eyes lit up. When he saw his disciples gnawing on pig trotters with constipated expressions, he knew that he might have discovered the truth. He picked up a big bowl of soup and immediately gulped it down. This smell is really. Chen Yonglong's hands, which were holding the bowl, froze. His eyes widened as he looked up at the sky. Burp. Senior Brother Chen Yonglong. Brother Chen Yonglong. What happened to you? Oh no, he's foaming at the mouth. Little Gu Go Master, save me. Guards. Quick, send him to the Purple Star Emergency Care Center. In the east of Purple Star Pavilion, there was an incomparably huge palace. How big was it? It was almost 10,000 times the size of the Patriarch's Hall. One had to realize that the sect leader palace was already the most majestic building in the 4-9 Immortal sect. What did it mean for it to be 10,000 times larger? It would not be an exaggeration to call it a small continent. It was the Spirit Patriarch Hall. Now, it had become the #1 cultivation ground of the 4-9 Immortal sect. In fact, it was even the #1 cultivation ground in the entire Tai Chu continent. There were all sorts of unique cultivation methods for one's consciousness that even the mighty figures of the Void Spirit realm coveted. Unfortunately, the 4-9 Immortal sect had already severed all ties with them. The blood-curdling cries of the 4-9 Immortal sect disciples and elders reverberated throughout the palace, as if they had entered some kind of haunted house. However, their experiences were even more tragic. There were often sect members who were drenched in blood and lying on stretchers as they were carried out. Quick! Send him to the Purple Star Emergency Care Center. Hurry up! Brother Zhao's hands have already been ground into mincemeat, and his consciousness has also been severely wounded. We have to send him to the intensive care unit. There were constantly injured people coming in and out of this place. However, everyone still came here to cultivate tirelessly. The Spirit Patriarch Hall was simply too miraculous. It was so miraculous that all of the sect members wanted to explore it even if they had to endure the terrifying dangers. Basically, with every cultivation session, the power of their consciousness would increase at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye. It could be said that all of the 4-9 Immortal sect members' consciousnesses had been tempered to a certain extent. Coupled with the Purple Star Pavilion's perfect after-sales service, their slogan was, "As long as you still have a single breath left in you, we can save you and make a perfect recovery." Hearing this slogan, all of the sect members had nothing to worry about when they participated in the trial. Hence, even though the Spirit Patriarch Hall was very terrifying, it was still very lively. The lonely guardian artifact spirit, the Spirit Maiden, was finally happy. She wore a red qipao which accentuated her lithe, exquisite, and curvaceous figure. She held a glass of red wine with her slender fingers, and her red lips parted slightly as she sipped on the red wine while listening to the melodious music of the disciples' blood-curdling screams. She felt like every single day was blissful and fulfilling. The Soul Saber formation in the White Tiger trial is too weak for a high-level soul formation stage trial. A few disciples didn't even cry after passing through the Soul Saber formation. This part can be improved. Bai Ling looked at the screen and spoke in an indifferent voice. The Spirit Maiden looked at Bai Ling with approval. What a coincidence. I was thinking the same thing, Sister Bai. You really are my soulmate. The two of them looked at each other with a smile, and the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. As the messenger, Zhou Yu didn't even dare to breathe loudly as cold sweat poured down his face. It was as if he would disrupt the conspiracy of these two demons if he opened his mouth. He began to browse through the 4-9 Immortal Sect news, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter upon seeing a certain piece of news. This instantly attracted the attention of the two women. What are you looking at? Is it that funny? Bai Ling asked curiously. Ha ha ha! Chun Yonglong drank the snot of the 1,000-year red rotten slug like it was soup. It was so disgusting that he frothed at the mouth and was sent to the Purple Star Emergency Center. Zhou Yu was grinning from ear to ear. Is it Little Gu's dark cuisine again? Bai Ling chuckled lightly. The Spirit Maiden murmured, I feel like Little Gu definitely knows what he's doing when cooking. It's probably not a matter of taste that's causing him to be hospitalized. Instead, when snot is unpalatable to a certain extent, his senses and consciousness will all respond to this taste. Furthermore, his impression of that taste and sensation will continue to deepen, thereby giving him a double blow. That's right. I feel like the main reason why he was hospitalized was because his consciousness was severely impacted. The Spirit Maiden murmured. Her eyes became brighter and brighter, as if she had received some sort of revelation. That's right. Intense disgust can also provide a peculiar spiritual impact, thereby stimulating the potential of one's consciousness. I've already thought of how to set up the new trial. I'm in as well. Bai Ling's eyes also lit up. Zhou Yu's expression was one of shock and horror. Were these two women demons? He was starting to regret watching the news and laughing. He was the sinner of the 4-9 Immortal Sect disciples. Chapter 2200. Before they knew it, night fell. Nighttime at the 4-9 Immortal Sect was extremely beautiful. Countless lanterns floated high up in the night sky like a sea of stars. The disciples were either sparring with each other in the dojo or sitting on the mountain peak to discuss the Tao. In fact, sleep was no longer something they had to do every day. Some of the more active disciples could even chat with their fellow disciples for days and nights. The Full Moon Mountain was the most renowned mountain in the 4-9 Immortal Sect. There was a large hot spring near the summit of the mountain known as the Moon Pond. From the top of the mountain, one could see stars twinkling around the moon, and from the bottom of the mountain, one could see brilliant lanterns. It was a holy land that all male disciples yearned for. Why was it so unreachable? That was because the Moon Pond was only open to the female disciples of the sect. Countless beautiful women, ranging from legendary beauties such as Lu Qianhuan, Yi Ling, and Bai Yao, all the way down to the adorable female disciples of the sect, would choose to soak themselves in the Moon Pond to rest and observe their Tao. The male disciples of the 4-9 Immortal Sect could only shake their heads and sigh as they gazed up at the mountain, unable to do anything else. It wasn't that no one wanted to sneak a peek, but the grass on his grave was already 30 feet tall. The manager of the hot spring, Setting Moon's celestial immortal Su Qianyun, was a merciless weapon. At this moment, the Moon Pond suddenly created a massive stir. Something that could elicit such a reaction from the female disciples of the Tai Chu continent was naturally quite extraordinary. The most renowned woman in the eastern region of the Tai Chu continent had arrived at the Moon Pond. That's right. The moon goddess Chang-Yi had descended into the mortal world. The Moon Pond on the Full Moon Mountain had welcomed the true master of the moon. Wasn't this very interesting? She looked at the moon every day, and now, the master of the moon had truly arrived. The female disciples of the sect naturally screamed in excitement. Being able to interact with Chang-yi intimately was a rare opportunity, and it was unimaginable to the world. Even the immortals of the celestial court didn't receive such good treatment, let alone the other first-rate sects on the Tai Chu continent. This was a matter of platform. Su Qianyun and Enlin of the 4-9 Immortal sect were on very good terms with Chang-yi, which was why all of the female disciples were able to see and interact with Chang-yi. Chang'e was indeed a super beautiful woman, so beautiful that it was a little dreamy. Under the illumination of the moonlight, even the most beautiful woman in the sect, Su Qianyun, paled in comparison to her. However, it wasn't to the extent that all of the other beauties in the sect paled in comparison. For example, Lu Qianhuan was mischievous, Bai Yao was pure and seductive, Yi Ling was innocent and seductive, and Xiao Hong was seductive and seductive. All of these were traits that she didn't have. All of the goddesses of the 4-9 Immortal sect were simply too good-looking. In the moon pool, Chang'e could only be said to be very eye-catching. She couldn't suppress her beauty, and at most, made this dreamy garden seem even more vibrant. In the moon pool, Chang'e also took off her clothes and soaked in the hot spring with a group of women. She was definitely the most fortunate woman on the entire Tai Chu continent. Unfortunately, only the female disciples of the 4-9 Immortal sect were fortunate enough to witness this. All of the celestial maidens were very excited, and all of them were laughing and joking around in the moon pool. Some of them praised Chang'e's perfect figure, some praised Chang'e's superb skin, and some even said that Chang'e was the embodiment of the essence of the moon and that hugging her would extend her lifespan by at least 100 years. However, only Su Qianyun dared to touch big sister Chang'e's body. Everyone else was just licking their lips. Chang'e was stunned by the enthusiasm of these 4-9 Immortal sect female disciples, but she was quite fond of this feeling. She felt like she had suddenly gained many sisters. That female disciple's face is so pretty. That female disciple's hair is so soft. The female disciple on the left has a huge bear. I really want to touch it, but I have to maintain my image as a goddess. Chang'e's heart was filled with conflict, and she had no choice but to place her hand on Su Qianyun's body. Big sister Chang'e? Su Qianyun raised her head, and her dreamy blue eyes were shimmering with tears. Her supple skin was particularly alluring under the dense mist of water. Nice, Chang'e said in a nasal voice. After being the moon for so long, I can finally take a good bath and relax my body and mind. Big sister Chang'e has always been pure and untainted. Even after 10,000 years, she's still a super clean beauty, Su Qianyun said in a mellow voice. You're such a sweet talker. Chang'e pinched Su Qianyun's nose. After pinching Su Qianyun's nose, she extended her hand toward other parts of her body. Su Qianyun evaded with a smile before splashing water toward Chang'e. Chang'e refused to back down, and the two of them began a water fight in the hot spring. You're bullying my Su Qianyun. I'll help you. Lu Qianhuan joined in on the water fight. Big sister Chang'e, I'll help you. Bai Yao ran over to Chang'e's side and joined in the water fight. All of the sisters were also very excited, and they began to play around in the hot spring. The frolicking and bell-like laughter were the best heavenly music in the hot spring, refreshing the heart and mind. After a while, all of the women took a break. Chang'e began to share her skincare and beauty tips with all of the celestial maidens. She also promoted her Moon Palace specialty products, the Moon Essence, as well as her Osmanthus skin cream and detoxification moon pill. All of the women immediately began to buy. All of the wealthy women of the 4-9 Immortal sect had no shortage of money. Chang'e's actions had earned her fans as well as spirit stones. It could be said that she had gained both fame and fortune. She was definitely the biggest winner of all. After shopping, it was time for the women to gossip. Shopping, putting on makeup, and gossiping were all part of women's nature. Regardless of whether they were ignorant young girls or experienced celestial maidens, none of them could rid themselves of this hobby. Big Sister Chang'e, I heard that true Lord Erling challenged you to a sparring match after the conclusion of the Eastern Front battle, and you knocked him out with 3 palm strikes. Is that true? Dong Zhen asked with a curious expression. All of the female disciples who were secretly admiring true Lord Erlang immediately perked up. Of course it's not true. Chang'e smiled lightly. Some of the female disciples heaved a faint sigh of relief. As expected, it was all just a rumor. As the former war god of the celestial court, no matter how weak she was, there was no way she would be so easily defeated. I only used 2 palm strikes to block true Lord Erlang. In reality, I only used 1 palm strike to defeat true Lord Erlang. Chang'e spoke with a nonchalant expression. Gasped. All of the women drew a sharp intake of breath. All of the female disciples who had just heaved a sigh of relief shuddered, and tears almost flowed from their eyes as if they had been dealt a heavy blow. By the way, I heard that Xianyuan Qing of your 4-9 Immortal sect has a Dao partner now? Chang'e changed the subject. Many of the female disciples heaved forlorn sighs at the mention of Xianyuan Qing. That's right, he's taken. Sister Xu Honglan is so awesome. She has successfully won Prince Charming Xuanyuan's heart. Sigh. They're in love with each other anyway. Now that they've officially acknowledged each other as Dao partners, it's not a big deal. Sigh. Why do all the Prince Charming of our sect have a significant other? All of the female disciples sighed with emotion. Blood young Lord Merlin is so handsome, but he doesn't have a Dao partner either. Forget about it. All he thinks about is the sect leader every day. He doesn't even spare us a second glance. All the members of the Blood Pavilion are like this. I wonder why. Speaking of sect leader Enlin, when is he going to return to the sect? I really want to see him flex on stage. Me too. Me too. Almost all of the female disciples' eyes lit up at the mention of Enlin, and the atmosphere instantly became livelier. They were only so united when they were talking about Enlin. They were like a bunch of loyal fangirls who wouldn't allow anyone to slander them. Enlin. Chang'e looked up into the sky with a faint smile on her exquisitely beautiful features. I'm also looking forward to seeing him again. Chapter 2201. Big Boss Enlin, I'm becoming more and more bad *SS. What should I do? Let's talk about that when you're more bad *SS than me. Big Boss Enlin, I made some West Sea seafood. Would you like to try it? Sure, bring me 3 servings. Hee. Aside from you and Big Sister Lan, is there another one for me? I want to make it for Little Na and Little Lan. I'll bring 4 servings. Lan Xiaoni. The mermaid princess swayed her long and slender tail as she glanced at the absent-minded man. She pouted her lips and ran off to get some seafood with an unhappy expression. Thus, Enlin continued to tour Yutong City with Tina and Little Lan. Tina told Little Lan a lot of information about the god of creation, which gave her a lot of inspiration and made her more resolute and decisive toward her future path. Enlin also listened with keen interest from the side. Even though he was a little mystified, he couldn't help but feel like it was quite impressive. My Little Na and Little Lan are so awesome. 2 days later, Little Lan decided to go into seclusion. Tina also wanted to go back to the Divine Mirror World. Little Na, why are you going back to the Divine Mirror World? Did something happen? Enlin asked with a concerned expression. He was afraid that Tina would be gone for a long time. Don't worry about me, Giant Enlin. I'm trying to figure out how to recover my power in the Divine Mirror World. Tina's smile was pure and beautiful, but her heart was extremely determined. She had to recover her power as quickly as possible. Only then would she be able to protect Enlin and prevent another tragedy from occurring. I have a few friends who are also gods of creation. Should you ask them to teach you how to sense the god of creation powers? They can also see why your Divine Mirror World is undergoing such changes. They're very experienced, and they might be able to find the source. Enlin was still a little concerned. Tina shook her head upon hearing this. There's no need for that. Little Na already told me that ever since we returned to the Tai Chu continent, Little Na's memory has been quickly recovering. Little Na already knows how to use the God of Creation powers. Then what about the source of the changes in the divine mirror world? Anlin asked. Little Na has an idea about that as well, Tina replied obediently. However, she was thinking to herself that she was probably the only God of creation who knew more about this than she did. After all, she was the only one who had gone against the flow of time. Don't worry, Giant Enlin, Little Na will be fine. Tina flew onto Enlin's shoulder and rubbed her little head against Enlin's cheek. Enlin hesitated momentarily before heaving a forlorn sigh. So be it, I'll go in with you. I'm the heavenly Tao of darkness, after all, so there are some things where my senses are better than yours. I should be able to help you. Tina faltered upon hearing this before Enlin's God. I'm the Tao of the darkness, Lin said. The two of them entered the divine mirror world again. Both Enlin and Tina had different feelings toward this bleak and desolate world. Enlin's heart throbbed with grief and guilt at the thought of how long the adorable Tina had been stuck in this godforsaken place. Tina's heart throbbed with guilt and sorrow at the thought of how long the adorable Tina had been stuck in this accursed place. Tina was fine as the past was the past, and all of the pain and loneliness she had experienced had disappeared from the moment she saw Enlin. She knew what she had to do, so her eyes were bright and clear, as if they were imbued with boundless hope and longing. I'm going to make this world a more beautiful and perfect place. The fairy made a vow to the barren and desolate world. Enlin nodded. Shall we create humans first? Tina blushed. What humans? If we don't create some intelligent life forms, are we going to wait for wild boars to develop intelligence? Enlin asked. Tina nodded with an enlightened expression. Most of the living beings in the divine mirror world are still alive. The fairy maiden patted her chest and said, They're in my heart. Enlin's lips twitched. They're immortal in your heart? That's not what I meant. Tina reverted to her human size before plunging her hand into her own heart right in front of Enlin's eyes. The scene was extremely bloody. Tui, no, there was no blood. There was only a flash of red light. Then, Tina took out a beautiful red pendant from her pocket. Enlin could sense his own aura from the pendant, and his heart jolted violently, as if he were about to stop breathing. This is? Enlin drew a sharp intake of breath as an expression of shock appeared on his face. This is a treasure that has your aura on it, but that's not the point. Tina shook her head with a smile. When I extracted the energy of this world, I transferred most of the living beings into this pendant. There's a world within this pendant as well. Enlin was astonished. What kind of technique was this to create a world within an object? Could it be that the legendary divine ability, one flower, one world, really existed? Was Tina already this powerful? So you're saying that the destruction of this world didn't lead to the extinction of all living beings? Enlin sighed with emotion. Tina nodded. I gave them a choice, but there were still a few living beings who chose to remain in this world, so I couldn't force them to do so. The fossilized living beings you saw earlier were none other than them, Giant Enlin. Enlin was enlightened upon hearing this. No wonder he had been confused as to why there were so few fossilized living beings in such a massive city. So it turned out that most of the living beings had been transferred away. So what we have to do now is to transform the divine mirror world into a complete world, and that'll solve all of our problems. Enlin asked. Tina nodded. That's right, but it's very difficult. I've overexerted myself and severely damaged the foundation of this world. Right now, the divine mirror world is like a dried-up well that has been running dry for countless years. I can't repair the foundation of this world, so I can't use my authority over this world to revive it. Enlin understood Tina's predicament upon hearing this. The foundation of this world had been severely damaged, and the gods of creation would find it difficult to repair it. This kind of destruction was usually a chain reaction. It was already very difficult for her to maintain this world and prevent it from going down the path of complete destruction. Unlin had already recovered to his peak condition, and he sensed the heavenly Tao again to find that even though the heavenly Tao was complete, it was extremely feeble and could crumble at any moment. If the heavenly Tao of the essence world were to crumble, then the gods of creation would also be destroyed, right? After all, Tina was the heavens, and the heavens were Tina. The two of them arrived at the center of the world, the immortal realm that they had once created. The immortal realm had been reduced to a crater, and there were inky black rocks all around it. There were also some dust bugs crawling all over the ground, creating a bleak and barren landscape. The scenes of vital energy pouring down like rain, fresh flowers, spirit fruits, and immortal fruits were nowhere to be seen. This is the center of the lifeline of heaven and earth. If we want to revive the entire world, we have to start here, Tina said. Chapter 2202. Tina pulled out a few golden seeds from her storage ring and planted them into the ground. These seeds were not to be underestimated. They were divine objects known as the spring essence. If you gave them a drop of water, they would be able to create an entire forest. This was not an exaggeration. They really could create a vibrant forest. This was a testament to the divinity and life force of these seeds. Repairing the world can be done from the inside to the outside, or it can also be done from the outside to the inside. Little Na, are you trying to create a resonance between the environment and the world, then find a special way to repair the world? Unlin asked with a thoughtful expression. You're so smart, Giant Unlin. Tina smiled. It's like a dry well with no running water. I'll fill it up with water, and let the water seep through the bottom of the well to see if I can find water of the same type. If I do, I'll be able to confirm the path and create a path for it. Unlin nodded. This was indeed a very good method, but it was also a test of the God of creation's understanding of themselves and the heavenly Tao. Tina buried a few spring origin seeds into the ground before taking out a kettle and pouring water onto the ground. The water glowed with green. This was also a divine object known as the divine water of creation, and it could bring the dead back to life. A single sip of this could cleanse the marrow of a cultivator and elevate their aptitude by several levels. When it fused with a living object, it could perfectly draw upon the life force of that object. The spring essence and the divine water of creation were a perfect match. Even if it was planted in chaos, it could create a vibrant forest world, let alone a desert that could transform into a forest. Sure enough, saplings began to emerge from the ground, and they grew taller and taller. Lush grasslands began to appear on the parched desert. Unlin could see that the dull and monotonous earth was beginning to glow with life, and it was expanding at an extremely fast rate. One small tree after another sprouted from the ground, and one stream after another began to flow. All types of vibrant flowers and plants began to spread across the earth. The earth turned green, and birds and insects began to sing. Life had appeared in the divine mirror world. Some of them were doing push-ups, some were doing yoga, some were doing sit-ups, and some were dancing hip-hop. All of them were as lively and energetic as teenagers. These little people are so cute, Unlin praised. They are the messengers of spring. Tina smiled as she looked at the tiny people before her. Look at them. They're full of vitality and vitality. As long as they exist, the divine mirror world can transform from a barren desert into an oasis. When the messenger of spring heard Tina's words, it seemed to be very happy. In front of the two of them, it began to shake its buttocks, its green limbs, and its green head as it began to dance in an enchanting and lively manner. There was no need to mention how smug and enchanting she looked. Do you see that, Giant Unlin? Their life force is so powerful that they don't even need a creator to gain sentience. They're the future of the divine mirror world. Tina spoke with envy in her eyes. and Lin pointed at the dancing little green men. I can understand why they're dancing, but why did their green heads suddenly turn grayish-brown? Tina's expression faltered upon seeing the grayish-brown color on the little green men's heads. Right at this moment, the grayish-brown color suddenly spread over the little green men's entire bodies. The little green men who were dancing merrily also noticed this, and their movements became sluggish. They looked at one another before discovering with shock and horror that their little friends had transformed from little green men into little brown men. Yee-yee. The little brown men began to wail with anguish. Crap, they're suffering backlash from heaven and earth. Tina's expression shifted, and she immediately used her authority to prevent this from happening. However, this backlash was extremely powerful, to the extent that even Tina was unable to withstand it. The heaven and earth had already grown accustomed to the vast expanse of desert, and it was completely unaccustomed to the exuberant vitality before its eyes. As such, it developed an extremely strong sense of rejection toward this kind of heresy. The origin of the world had already been destroyed, and only desolation and destruction were suitable for this world. Any living beings would be rejected by the entire world, as if the entire world was trying to walk toward destruction. Yee! The little brown men jumped and jumped before falling face first to the ground. The green grass and flowers wilted, the vibrant trees' leaves withered, the tree trunks decayed, and the rivers disappeared into the sand. No. Tina looked on as the scenery before her slowly walked toward destruction. It was as if the entire world was walking toward destruction, but she was completely powerless to do anything. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. Soon, all of the green in the area completely disappeared. The envoys of spring that were still dancing merrily just a moment ago also fell to the ground. And Lin was also completely powerless to do anything. He was unable to prevent the backlash, nor was he able to intervene in this evolution of life. Otherwise, it would only backfire on him. The entire world returned to its bleak and desolate state. Tina pursed her lips tightly and picked up the envoys of spring, only to see them disintegrate into specks of light. Not even their corpses were left behind for her to cherish. Is this path not going to work after all? Tina murmured to herself. The concept and train of thought are correct, but the envoys of spring are unable to withstand the backlash. In other words, those little green men are simply too weak, and Lin concluded. Tina pursed her lips. The spring essence and the divine water of creation are already the most powerful treasures I can offer. If even that doesn't work, then what else can I do? Even the high-rank divine items are so weak. I'm starting to think that they're fake. And Lin opened his mouth to say something, but he swallowed his words in the end. These divine items could actually repair a normal world with no issues. The problem was that the backlash of the divine mirror world was simply too terrifying. Even the heavenly darkness god was struck by a sense of trepidation. The intensity of the backlash also represented the level of the world. Thinking about it this way, Tina's divine mirror world had most likely reached an unfathomable level. And Lin thought about it for a moment before bringing out a green water droplet from his storage ring. Little Na, why don't you try this? What's this? Tina accepted the green water droplet and placed it in front of her eyes to find that it was a vast expanse of green, and there seemed to be something very special contained within it. This is something that I obtained by chance from a living world. It contains extremely powerful life force energy and is definitely of a higher level than those two divine items. You can try planting it as a seed. And Lin pretended to be nonchalant as he spoke. This was a deal that he had made with the Heavenly Life God. The Heavenly Life God had given him this thing known as the Heart of Life, and she said that it contained the purest essence of life and could be used to save his life in dire situations. And Lin felt like this thing would perhaps have a miraculous effect in the divine mirror world. As for saving his life, he had to keep it for himself? Little Na's world had already been reduced to such a state, so of course he had to give it to her first. and Lin did not hesitate in the slightest. Chapter 2203. Tina could sense that the green water droplet that Lin had given her was extraordinary. Furthermore, she could sense that it was resonating with the heavenly Tao that she was in control of. Giant Lin, this thing, she instinctively felt like this item was far too valuable. This is a treasure of the goddess of life. I only stole it from her, so feel free to use it, Lin replied with a nonchalant expression. Tina was a little skeptical, but she finally stuck out her tongue at the sight of Lin's irrefutable expression. Thank you, Giant Lin. What's this thing called? It's called the Heart of Life. Heart of Life. Life is just a concept. Does it really have a heart? Even the heavens have hearts, so how could life not have hearts? You're right. A faint smile appeared on Tina's face as she looked at the green water droplet in her hand. She carefully planted the heart of life into the ground of the divine mirror world. On the surface, it looked as if she was burying a green water droplet into the ground. However, she was actually burying the heart of life into the heavenly Tao. She trusted in Lin, so she decided to use the heart of life to allow the heavenly Tao to experience life and rediscover the feeling of life. An unimaginable sense of excitement instantly surged through the entire heaven and earth. In that instant, Tina was also enshrouded by a peculiar green light. The soil on the ground began to become more fertile, and flowers and grass began to sprout from the ground. Small saplings began to grow rapidly, and forests began to appear. Soon, the entire barren desert was transformed into a vast expanse of land filled with vitality, and this trend was still quickly spreading. Lin was still extremely nervous upon seeing this. The sudden death of the envoy of Spring Dance told him not to celebrate too early. Only by enduring the backlash of heaven and earth would he be able to have the last laugh. Extremely dense life energy flowed and surged above the ground. An azure light of life rose into the sky from the spot where the seed had been planted, cleansing the pale white sky of all impurities, making it appear especially clear and blue. The disturbance caused by this life heart is even more intense than those two divine items combined. It looks like there's hope, Lin said happily as he watched the excitement unfold. Ugh! Tina let loose a muffled groan as cold sweat poured down her body. The most essential life force energy surged into her body in a frenzy, sending her flying into the sky. Little Na, why are you flying into the sky? Lin was given a fright. Giant Lin, your life heart is so powerful. I can feel an endless stream of running water, an endless stream of running water. Tina flew into the sky before transforming into specks of light that merged into heaven and earth. Only a voice was left echoing between heaven and earth. Giant Lin, I'm going to repair the essence of this world. Wait for me. Immediately afterward, Tina's existence completely disappeared. Lin stood on the ground and looked at the world around him, feeling quite confused. What was going on? What happened to the heaven and earth backlash? Why didn't it come? In the blink of an eye, he had reached his goal and could repair the world origin now? Was the life heart really that powerful? He recalled the serious expression on the heavenly life goddess face when she handed the water droplet to him. It seemed like the life heart really was quite important. At the very least, it had to be the essence of the heavenly Tao of life of the Tai Chu continent. The life force energy proliferated in an extremely violent manner. The divine mirror world was filled with life again. It was truly filled with life. It wasn't like the forest that the envoy of spring had created in the past. Instead, all types of terrain, plants, and animals began to appear. It was like a withered tree being reborn. The world was changing very quickly. The heavenly Tao was also contributing to this change. It was as if the world was retaliating after experiencing countless disasters. Lin could sense that the subconscious will of the heavenly Tao was still resisting the power of the life heart, but that power was being nullified by an even more powerful burst of power from the life heart and the subconscious will of the heavenly Tao. Lin came to a sudden realization. It wasn't that the heavenly Tao wasn't retaliating, it was just that the life heart was too powerful. The heavenly Tao also had two tendencies. One was the desire to die, while the other was the desire to live. In the past, the desire to die was the dominant force, and the envoy of spring was immediately crushed. But now, due to the appearance of the life heart, the world seemed to have fallen into some kind of climax. The desire to live suddenly took over and unleashed boundless power. The life heart had successfully resisted the heavenly Tao's backlash. This world was beginning to change. Tina began to use her authority to change the topography of the world. Glaciers, polar regions, rivers, oceans, mountain ranges, forests, the landscape of the past began to reappear. Vital energy also began to recover. Lin looked on in silence. This world had transformed from a barren hell into a paradise. This was a very special and dreamlike experience, and his heart surged with emotions. This is a miracle. Life is a miracle. Lin suddenly understood what the heavenly life goddess was saying. He could sense the vitality of the world, he could sense the elation of heaven and earth, and he could even sense that the heavenly Tao was showing signs of returning to its youth. The item that the heavenly life goddess had given him was quite good. However, the item that he had given the heavenly life goddess was not bad either. This was a fair exchange. In the end, vitality spread throughout the entire world. The world regained its splendor. Even the Black Sea at the center of the world had become a milky white ocean. The all-engulfing abyssal sea had been transformed into the all-nurturing sea of hope. Lin was the only intelligent living being who had witnessed all of this. At this moment, a beautiful fairy who looked as if she had just walked out of a dream slowly descended from the sky. Her features were as beautiful as a painting, and she wore a vibrant smile on her face. Before she even landed, a pleasant fragrance wafted toward him. Giant Lin, the essence of this world is already being repaired. I'm sure that the divine mirror world will become the divine mirror world that it once was. Tina spoke with an elated expression. Lin was also very happy to see such an energetic Tina. He wanted nothing more than to turn around and give the life heart a 5-star review. This life heart was so worth it. By the way, can we release all of the living beings in the divine mirror world? Lin had not seen his old friends for a long time, so he couldn't wait any longer. I still have to make some preparations. After all, there are 5 gods of creation and hundreds of billions of intelligent living beings in there. The energy required is extremely vast, so it'll take a few days before a suitable passageway can be constructed to transport all of the living beings into the divine mirror world, Tina replied with a serious expression. Lin was rooted to the spot upon hearing this. Hundreds of billions of intelligent living beings? Was the divine mirror world already this big? And there were 5 gods of creation? Holy Mother of God! Chapter 2204. Lin was indeed astonished. What kind of beings were gods of creation? Even in the center of the universe, the Taichu continent was a legendary existence that was rarely seen. If one had to count them, they could be counted on 2 hands. They weren't even talking about small goals like dominating a realm. After all, such small goals were easily obtainable, and they were completely insignificant to them. Every single one of them was a paramount being of a certain power or tribe. They had extremely lofty statuses, and they wouldn't be afraid even if the sky collapsed. And there were 5 of them in the divine mirror world? Lin suddenly thought back to the carcass of the dragon he had seen near the Black Sea. That dragon seemed to be a god of creation, which meant that there were most likely more than 5 god of creation stage beings in the history of the divine mirror world. Just what had happened in the divine mirror world? Lin was struck by a sense of horror. If he were to tell the members of the divine mirror division that there were now 5 gods of creation in the divine mirror world, who knew what their expressions would be like, even Lin was astonished. They were probably going to be scared ***less. If we can get those 5 gods of creation to join the heaven-crushing united army, wouldn't our journey to the heaven-crushing realm be even smoother? And Lin's eyes lit up. That's what little Na was thinking as well. Tina pursed her lips with a smile. Wait. Gods of creation are usually very independent and have their own ideas. Why would they agree to take such a risk for no reason? And Lin was struck by a headache upon thinking of this. At this moment, a warm and soft sensation came from his arm. Tina had already latched onto Lin's arm with a faint smile on her face. Don't think too much, Giant and Lin. They're all very obedient and they'll all listen to me. Really? Of course. When has little Na ever lied to you? Tina replied without any hesitation. What was the point of nurturing all these underlings if they didn't come out to help her? She might as well raise pigs. And Lin left the divine mirror world. The restoration of the world had already begun, and the next step was to complete the restoration of the world, as well as the restoration of the essential power. Tina was the only one to oversee all of this. And Lin returned to Yutong Divine City. At this point, Tina was already able to lock onto his aura, and she was able to open up a passageway between the two worlds to enter and exit at will. What does this look like? It was like a plug-in that could be carried around with you. Tina's world was his world. When he was in danger, all he had to do was yell, "Save me, Tina!" and the little fairy would be able to summon a group of people from another world to help him fight. Doesn't this seem like he's carrying a world with him as his backing? Even a god of creation wouldn't be this flashy, right? It was exactly because of this that Lin's gait was like a gust of wind as he walked. Soon, he arrived at the Orchid Forest courtyard. Greetings, Lord Sovereign. Long live the Emperor Lord. The proud vermilion birds bowed respectfully to Lin. They used to think that Su Xiaolan was their only source of light, but after seeing Lin, they realized that there was actually someone in this world who was worthy of their empress. The great Empress Dao partner was naturally their Lord Sovereign. No need for formalities. Lin waved a nonchalant hand. By the way, has Xiaolan come out of seclusion yet? Reporting to Lord Emperor, not yet. Vermilion Bird Nanli was still as respectful as ever. Lin nodded. Who knew how long Su Xiaolan's seclusion would take? Actually, he had also learned about the existences that broke through to the Genesis tier. Some comprehended in a single day, and would be able to attain Dao and create a world at night. Some were like a trickling stream, and after hundreds of thousands or millions of years, they would accumulate and form an ocean. Only after accumulating to a certain extent would they be able to climb to the pinnacle. Of course, there were also powerful beings like the Celestial Dharch, who were still stuck at the Dao integration pinnacle stage even after countless years. There were actually quite a few of them. What kind of powerful being was Su Xiaolan? She probably didn't even know herself. In any case, he was just going to observe in silence. What if he were to attain enlightenment? Lin didn't want to distract Xiaolan, so he strolled along the streets of Yutong City. It was a warm and sunny day, and there were quite a few soldiers strolling along the street. All of them greeted Lin enthusiastically. If Lin were to wave at them, he wouldn't be able to keep up with all of them, so he just nodded at them like a powerful being would. In the end, he walked like a woodpecker for the rest of the journey. He was starting to understand why some celebrities were so cold and aloof. If they were a little more enthusiastic toward their fans, they would tire themselves to death. Sigh. Being famous is like being fat, Lin shook his head. He felt like he was about to develop a cervical spondylosis from nodding so much. He suddenly recalled the cervical spine exercises that Dabai had taught him. Lin looked up into the sky and murmured to himself, "Drawing **T in the sky?" Lin gave it a try and found that it was quite effective. He wasn't afraid of being seen by others. After all, no one would think in that direction. On the contrary, a few of Lin's fanatical admirers thought that Lin was cultivating something, and they began to imitate him by drawing **T in the sky. Just as Lin finished drawing the 12th **T, the sky was suddenly enveloped by a golden light. Boom! The sky trembled. The great Tao of heaven and earth resonated. It was as if something had exploded in the east. All of the living beings in Yutong City were startled. Anlin soared into the sky. At the same time, his eyes became deep and dark as he stared at the end of the horizon in the east. There was a boundless light that was even more dazzling than the sun. The golden light engulfed his vision. It was as if everything in the east was on fire. Anlin stared toward the east, trying to discern something. At this moment, a pair of eyes suddenly appeared in the east. These eyes were imbued with boundless light, and unless one was a powerful being, it would be impossible to detect them. Anlin felt that gaze. It was bright, scorching, and purifying, as if it was going to turn him into particles of light in an instant. However, Anlin was unmoved. He stood silently in the sky and stared at the pair of eyes. The owner of the eyes was a little surprised. Then, the enmity in the eyes receded, and there was even a hint of provocation in them. The light continued to shine. However, the pair of eyes that made even Anlin's heart palpitate disappeared. All of the living beings on the Tai Chu continent were alarmed by the extreme light in the east. Even the winds and clouds in the world were stirred up by this peerless light. They all knew that after a short period of peace, a storm was about to strike again. This was the brightest day in the entire Tai Chu continent. The sky was very bright, and so was the earth. However, it wasn't scorching. Instead, many living beings were struck by a sense of peace and tranquility. However, all of the living beings were feeling very uneasy. They all knew that a calamity was about to befall them. Anlin looked toward the east, and an unprecedented battle intent erupted from his body. It looks like the heavenly light goddess has successfully completed her transformation. I wonder who is stronger between her and me? Chapter 2205. Tai Chu Continent, Purple Star Ruins. The heaven-breaking glazed palace stood tall above a land of eternal light. Inside the palace, Cyril's relaxed expression changed. The heavenly light goddess is getting restless. We have to speed up. Hearing this, Chen nodded. If she attacks, we can only defend. Fortunately, the great heaven-crushing array has been set up. We can stay in the heaven-crushing glazed palace and wait for it to finish accumulating energy. How much power have you accumulated? Cyril asked. In terms of quantity, I can already break the heavens, but the success rate is too low. I want to continue increasing the energy, Chen said calmly. How is the universe's energy absorption going? Do you need me to make a few more holes in Panga's rampart? Cyril asked. Chen shook his head. Forget it. If we destroy too much, Panga might sense it and suddenly return to this world. If that happens, forget about the supreme heavenly god, all of our plans will be screwed. Cyril thought back to that gigantic figure, and he didn't refute Chen's words. Only those who had experienced Panga's power would know how terrifying it was. A primal chaos elder god. I wonder who's stronger between him and your master? Cyril chuckled as he glanced at Chen. Chen was still as calm as still water when he heard this, and he said indifferently, after Master transcended the three realms, he ignored the mortal world. Even if Panga challenged him to a fight, he wouldn't fight. What if Panga hits you? Cyril suddenly asked. Chen thought for a moment. He'll eat a watermelon while watching. Cyril. All right, it seemed that when people reached a certain level, they would really be indifferent to other things. Chen was a human from the ancient Tai Chu realm, and his master could be said to be the most powerful being in the entire ancient Tai Chu realm. It was very likely that he was the one who had written the records of the destruction of the ancient Tai Chu realm, as well as the mastermind behind the destruction of the ancient Tai Chu realm. Cyril was tossing a series of high-density energy crystals toward the heaven-crushing formation when he suddenly turned around and said, "By the way, I heard that Anlin swallowed your master's bones." Chen fell silent. After a while, he said, "This is Anlin's immortal fate." Cyril smiled. "Aren't you afraid that your master will beat him up?" That's your master's skeleton, it's very precious. Chen Chen shook his head. I'll protect Enlin. TSK. Cyril didn't know how to respond to Chen Chen's nonchalant response. Chen Chen's master was also known as the heavenly true immortal. It was an extremely transcendent and ethereal existence. Even gods of creation who had lived for countless years were struck by this mysterious being, let alone Tao integration stage mighty figures. It was as if he were a being hidden above the great Tao, and no living beings in this world were able to detect his existence. Being stared at by such an existence, one would definitely feel uneasy. Poor Enlin. He probably didn't know what kind of existence he had provoked. Don't think too much about it, Chen Chen said. Let's focus on Heavenbreaker. If we fail, we'll all be annihilated. Cyril smiled in agreement as he continued to toss one energy crystal after another into the vortex at the center of the palace. Each and every energy crystal here was imbued with the same amount of energy as the core of a planet. If they were released, they would be able to reduce an entire realm to rubble. Cyril was tossing these terrifying creatures into the vortex as if they were jelly beans. The pillar of energy rising into the sky became denser and denser. Who knew just how much energy was imbued within this pillar of light? All they knew was that once the pillar of light exploded, it would be able to destroy heaven and earth. At the eastern heavenly gate, a woman in a light black dress with a slender waist stood before the heavenly gods. There was no hostility in her crimson eyes. Instead, there was a hint of laziness and purity in them. Next, I need to do something extremely important. It's something that can decide the outcome of the war from now on, the most important thing that can decide the outcome of the war. The woman's voice was clear and gentle as she spoke in an unhurried manner. Heavenly Light Goddess, what is your most important task? The Heavenly Karma God asked with a scorching light in her eyes. The Heavenly Light Goddess replied, I'm going to the ancient Tai Chu realm to forge a weapon that belongs solely to me, a damaged sword of the Heavenly Tao. Damaged sword of the Heavenly Tao, all of the Heavenly God's eyes lit up upon hearing this. The current Heavenly Light Goddess combat prowess was far superior to all the other paramount beings, and she was still going to forge a sword of the Heavenly Tao? Just how powerful would her combat prowess be? No wonder the Heavenly Light Goddess said that this was something that could determine the outcome of this battle. However, it was understandable that she was going to forge a sword of the Heavenly Tao, but why did she say it was a damaged sword of the Heavenly Tao? Right at this moment, the Heavenly Light Goddess continued, I'm going to leave for a while. I'll be counting on all of you to guard the Eastern Heavenly Gate during this time. Heavenly Light Goddess, I'll bestow upon you a portion of the power of light. You'll have to disguise yourself as me and make the other enemies think that I'm still at the Eastern Heavenly Gate. A handsome man with flowing golden hair and jade-like skin bowed respectfully with a smile. Yes, Heavenly Light Goddess, I'll be sure to complete this mission perfectly. The Heavenly Light Goddess pointed a finger, and a beam of golden light shot into the Heavenly Light Goddess's forehead. His aura swelled drastically as the power of light radiated from his body. What a wonderful and powerful power! The Heavenly Light Goddess couldn't help but moan softly. All right, do you have any more questions? The Heavenly Light Goddess continued to speak to the heavenly gods before her. I have a question. The girl in the golden tortoise's shell raised her fair and slender hand. Black Mist, go ahead. The Heavenly Light Goddess nodded. May I ask when you'll be back? Heavenly God Black Mist asked. 3 days at least, 10 days at most. It won't be very long, the Heavenly Light Goddess replied. All of the heavenly gods heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. They were afraid that the Heavenly Light Goddess would take too long to return. If too much time passed, and the enemy had already finished destroying or mending the heavens, it would be useless even if the Heavenly Light Goddess returned. 10 days was not a very long time. Do you have any other questions? The Heavenly Light Goddess asked. All of the heavenly gods had no objections. Just like that, the heavenly light goddess forcibly tore open a spatial gate between the two worlds under the watchful eyes of all of the heavenly gods. Then, she stepped into the spatial gate and disappeared. The heavenly light goddess has left. It's up to us now. We have to guard the eastern heavenly gate. All of the heavenly gods were filled with fighting spirit, as if they had shouldered some kind of mission. Heavenly God Black Mist blinked. He walked to a certain island in the East Sea under the guise of patrolling and patted the head of a certain sea turtle. The sea turtle jumped into the water and disappeared. Chapter 2206. Both Chen-Shi City and Yutong City had entered a state of emergency. These were the two largest cities on the Tai-Chu continent defending against the Heavenly Human Tribe United Army. There were countless powerful beings gathered here, and their defenses were so tight that not even a fly would be able to sneak into the city. In the clouds above Yutong City, a light-wing clan archangel suddenly opened his eyes before flicking a finger toward a certain spot in the air. A burst of energy traveled over 30,000 meters before reducing a ladybug flying toward the city to dust. Humph, a mere ladybug dares to invade our city? What a reckless idiot! The archangel looked at the ladybug with a cold expression. This was the 91,233rd intruder he had killed. As the guardian of a small area, he was quite responsible. In this area, not even bacteria had the right to step into Yutong Divine City. Of course, he didn't care about bacteria. He only cared about the big ones. Heavenly Angel Qing Guangda, War God Lin is here to deliver some snacks to you. A little angel flew toward the archangel in the sky before handing a spirit pill to Qing Guangda in a respectful manner. This sect leader Lin is far too considerate. Heavenly God Qing Guang was extremely touched as he held the spirit pill in his hands. He was a little reluctant to eat it. Don't worry, Heavenly Angel Qing Guangda. War God Lin said that there will be spirit pills for you every day to replenish your energy and relieve your fatigue. The little angel chuckled. Relieve fatigue with a spirit pill? That was way too extravagant. Heavenly Angel Qing Guangda sighed with emotion, but he still put the spirit pill away into his storage ring. This was a spirit pill from Lin, and it was very valuable, so he had to take good care of it. He, Qing Guang, would rather eat his own spirit pill than eat Lin's spirit pill. Thus, Qing Guangda brought out one of his own spirit pills and tasted it. Sect leader Lin, you're so nice, he praised. The little angel's lips twitched upon seeing this, and he bowed in farewell. Why was it that all of the mighty figures were like this? They basically refused to eat the spirit pills from War God Lin, and they would munch on their own spirit pills while praising Lin. This was way too strange. The little angel in charge of delivering Dandan was completely confused. Qing Guang had just finished tasting the delicious spirit pill when he suddenly discovered something strange. Who is it? He suddenly turned his gaze to the ground and said with a vigilant expression. It's not a person, it's a turtle. A giant turtle riding on a whirlwind fierce rabbit ran over from afar and shook its head. Qing Guang was taken aback by the reaction of the turtle on the ground. The next moment, he pulled out the holy spear from his back and said solemnly, "Do you have a pass or an invitation? Yutong Divine City is a forbidden area. All living beings without a pass or invitation should leave immediately. Anyone who trespasses will be killed. I don't have a pass, but I have something to say to Lin." Ocean pulled the whirlwind rabbit's ear to make it slow down. How dare you? Is War God Lin someone you can meet just because you want to? Qing Guang gripped the holy spear tightly, and his aura surged as he spoke fiercely. The turtle ignored Qing Guang's threat and continued to shake its head. I have confidential information that I want to tell him personally. It's his loss if he doesn't come. Qing Guang burst into laughter upon hearing this. Ha ha, War God Lin is a very busy man. You're just a turtle that popped out of nowhere. You think you can get an audience with Master Lin just because you have some confidential information? Tell me, what secret do you have? Suddenly, a man in white appeared in front of the turtle. Qing Guang's expression changed, and he immediately bowed. Great Angel Qing Guang pays his respects to War God Enlin. No need for formalities. The man in white waved his hand. He was Enlin, who had nothing better to do. He suddenly appeared in front of the rabbit. The whirlwind fierce rabbit was so scared that it slammed on the brake. The giant turtle on its back reacted half a beat too late. Due to inertia, it pulled on the rabbit's ear and fell to the ground. The turtle and the rabbit rolled to Enlin's feet just like that. There's no need for such formalities. Enlin looked at the strange creature that was prostrating itself to him. The corners of his mouth twitched, but he was still as calm as before. Ahem. I knew Enlin wouldn't miss out on any confidential information. The sea turtle struggled to turn over and lay on the ground. It stretched its neck, put away its embarrassed expression, and said slowly, "Of course, I won't let go of any clues. I heard that there's a secret, so I came." "So, what secret do you want to tell me?" Enlin, who was busy every day, wouldn't say that he had nothing better to do and ran over when he heard that there was a secret. The surrounding tens of thousands of miles were under his supervision. The conversation between the giant turtle and Qing Guang naturally fell into his ears. I can't say. The turtle shook its head. "What are you doing here if you don't tell me?" Enlin glared at the turtle. The turtle shrank its head, turned around and said, "Look at my shell." Enlin looked at the turtle's shell and immediately understood what it was thinking. It turned out that the veined patterns on this shell were very special and contained some kind of information. Could it be that they were afraid that the other paramount heavenly gods would be able to detect it? The other party's information encryption was pretty good. Enlin nodded and began to study it carefully. He discovered that the veined patterns on the turtle's shell would alternate between light and shadow under the sun, thereby conveying some kind of information. This method was very familiar, as if he had used it before. He didn't need to learn it to be able to instinctively read some kind of information from these projections. Furthermore, this was information that only those who possessed the purest power of darkness had the right to read. The person conveying this information to him was one of his own, and Lin's heart was suddenly filled with excitement. The heavenly light goddess was going to the ancient Tai Chu realm to forge an extremely terrifying damaged sword of the heavenly Tao? 3 to 10 days? The eastern heavenly gate was being guarded by the heavenly light goddess? Enlin frantically read the information, and his heart was filled with shock. He was astonished by the heavenly light goddess's plan. He was also astonished by the source of this information. So, he also had a pawn in the enemy's camp? How thrilling! So the question was, could he trust the heavenly light goddess's words? How could he be sure that the heavenly light goddess really wanted to join his camp and wasn't just setting him up? Even if the heavenly light goddess was using a method that he was familiar with, that didn't mean that she was one of his own. Heavenly God Void God was once his subordinate, and the heavenly sea god referred to him as his brother. The most unreliable thing these days was the friendship of the heavenly gods. The person who had conveyed the information referred to herself as the heavenly darkness goddess, and she was one of the subordinates of the heavenly darkness goddess. That sounded quite cowardly, but it was also very realistic. Enlin had heard of the heavenly darkness goddess before. On the Eastern Front battlefield, she carried a golden turtle shell on her back. Her combat prowess was extremely powerful, and she knew how to protect herself. She fled as soon as the situation turned sour. So many heavenly gods had died, but she hadn't even sustained any serious injuries. However, this wasn't the reason why Enlin trusted her. To be honest, this was very difficult to verify unless he sent an army to attack the Eastern Heavenly Gate. However, if he did that, it would be very easy to alert the enemy. So the question was, should he go to the ancient Tai Chu realm? Chapter 2207. In the past, Unlin had always been troubled by the fact that all of his former subordinates had betrayed him after he became the heavenly darkness goddess. He shouldn't have been this bad in the past. Now, he finally had subordinates who were willing to follow him. However, he was in disbelief. This was a very contradictory feeling. Right now, he had three choices. The first one was to deploy his troops and attack the eastern heavenly gate. If the heavenly light goddess really wasn't there, then he would blow up the eastern heavenly gate in one go. If the heavenly light goddess was there, then he would retreat and let this matter pass. The second was to sneak into the ancient Tai Chu realm and foil the heavenly light goddess plan. If there was an opportunity, then he would see if he could capture the heavenly light goddess in the ancient Tai Chu realm. The third was to ignore everything and just go back to eat, sleep, and beat up Daodu. Unlin fell into deep thought. The sea turtle thought that Unlin was thinking, so it raised its head and asked, "You don't understand?" Unlin came to his senses and looked at the sea turtle with a sinister smile. "I was thinking, this information is too important. Should I destroy your corpses to prevent it from being leaked?" The sea turtle and the rabbit were on the verge of tears upon hearing this. "War god Unlin, don't kill me, I'm just a messenger." The sea turtle shrank back into its shell and begged for mercy. "Squeak, squeak, squeak. Don't kill me, I'm just an errand boy." The rabbit used the sea turtle's shell as a shield as it begged for mercy. Unlin couldn't help but chuckle at the sight of these two clowns. "Alright, I'm just joking. I won't kill the innocent. Here, this is your reward." Unlin tossed 2 high-rank spirit pills to the sea turtle and rabbit. The sea turtle and rabbit trembled as they accepted the pills, but they didn't dare to eat them. Who knew if they were poisoned by a powerful being? Unlin smiled lightly before turning to leave. "Farewell, war god Unlin." The archangel bowed. The sea turtle hurriedly lay down. "Farewell, patriarch Unlin." Whirlwind Rabbit quickly kowtowed. "Ancestor Unlin is unparalleled throughout the ages." After saying that, the two animals ran away. When Archangel Qing Guang saw that Unlin wasn't hostile towards the two things, he naturally wouldn't make things difficult for them and let them leave. At this moment, in the easternmost region of the Tai Chu continent, the girl with the golden turtle shell on her back was lying on the beach. Her arms and legs were spread wide open, and she was basking in the sun without any makeup on. Under the sunlight, the tortoise shell sparkled with a golden light, even more dazzling than a pearl. At this moment, the young girl's heart was also heavy with worries. Will the heavenly darkness goddess really believe me? If the heavenly light goddess finds out that her plan has been foiled, will she suspect me? Should I go and join the enemy now? Otherwise, I won't be able to escape in the future. The heavenly light goddess is so powerful now, so it'll be very difficult for the heavenly darkness goddess to defeat her, right? Does this mean that I've chosen the loser's side? Wah! I should have done nothing and not known anything. I feel like following Unlin is a trap. The more heavenly goddess Black Mist thought about it, the more she regretted her decision. Why did she betray Unlin in the first place? So be it. There was no turning back now anyway. If you marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. After acknowledging a master, there was no point in changing. Unless that master ignored her message and went back to sleep. Within Yutong City, Unlin lay down on his bed. He wanted to sleep. He wanted to put everything aside and take a good rest. After all, was he really going to venture into the ancient Tai Chu realm for such a vague message? What secret? What allegiance? It all depended on heavenly goddess Black Mist's words. Back then, the heavenly sea god had asked him to join forces with him to screw over the heavenly earth god, and the heavenly sea god had put on a good show. In the end, even his sworn brother was going to screw over him. However, what if heavenly goddess Black Mist was telling the truth? If that was the case, he had to foil the heavenly light goddess plan. Sigh. Why are you always giving me death sentences? Unlin tossed and turned in bed, and for some reason, He recalled the scene of heavenly goddess Lin Yu looking at him with tears streaming down her face. He took a deep breath before sitting up. So be it, heavenly goddess Black Mist is my subordinate. If she's my subordinate, then even if she doesn't follow me, she won't screw me over. I feel like I still have that bit of charisma. And Lin made up his mind and immediately made his way out the door. Dark Wing Emperor! And Lin yelled. A dark shadow suddenly appeared. Immediately afterward, it transformed into a majestic man with a pair of massive black wings. What instructions do you have for me, Your Majesty? The Dark Wing Emperor spoke in an extremely respectful voice. I have to leave this city. You walk the path of darkness, which is quite similar to mine, so I'll bestow upon you the power of darkness. You can pretend to be me in Yutong City, so that the enemies will think that I'm still in Yutong City, and Lin said in a cold voice. The Dark Wing Emperor's body trembled upon hearing this, and tears of excitement welled up in his eyes. As you wish. He knew what this power of darkness entailed. Even though he was working for Lin, it was undoubtedly a great fortune for him to be able to possess the essential power of darkness. Lin flicked a finger, and a burst of darkness began to flow into the Dark Wing Emperor's body. The Dark Wing Emperor let loose a loud cry as his aura soared explosively. Darkness surged violently within his body, and his wings also became even darker. Ah! What a wonderful power! This is the meaning of life. This is the ultimate Tao that I want to pursue. The Dark Wing Emperor bowed to Lin as he spoke with excitement. Thank you, Your Majesty. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. I'll leave Yutong City to you. Lin's body flashed, and he instantly disappeared on the spot. The Heavenly Light Goddess had created an impostor to guard the Eastern Heavenly Gate, so Lin was going to follow suit and create an impostor to guard Yutong City. In any case, all he had to do was fool his enemies. Not long after that, within the celestial court above the clouds, somewhere in a secret forbidden area, there was a door of light that was constantly changing. Emperor Ziwei looked at Lin with an uneasy expression. Lin, are you really going to the ancient Tai Chu realm? The passageway hasn't even been opened yet. Before he had a chance to finish his sentence, Lin forcibly thrust his hand into the gate, upon which darkness engulfed all of the laws within. What did you say? Lin already had one foot in the door, and he turned to look at Emperor Ziwei. Emperor Ziwei. But there are powerful laws within the ancient Tai Chu realm that can prevent all cultivators at or above the Return to Void pinnacle stage from entering. Emperor Ziwei was still a little concerned. A smile appeared on Lin's face upon hearing this. Don't forget that I am the Heavenly Darkness God. I know how to evade the backlash of the Heavenly Tao in that place. Emperor Ziwei. He suddenly realized that there was nothing else he could say. The man before him had already matured to a level that even he had to marvel at. Then, Lin, you have to come back safe and sound. Don't worry, Ziwei, I'll be back in a few days. Lin waved a hand before disappearing into the gate between the two worlds. Chapter 2208. Lin suppressed his cultivation base to the Return to Void intermediate stage in order to completely conceal his divine Tao of darkness. That way, he would be able to avoid the backlash of the Heavenly Tao. It wasn't that no super mighty being had thought of this before. It was just that every time they tried to disguise themselves, they would be discovered by the Heavenly Tao, and they would be severely injured by the backlash. However, Lin was different. His understanding of the heavens ranked in the top 5 even in the entire Tai Chu continent. The more one understood the heavens, the more one would be able to deceive the heavens. From this point of view, Cyril was a perfect example. Thinking back, when he first met Cyril, he had just returned from the ancient Tai Chu realm. The restrictions of the ancient Tai Chu realm didn't apply to him at all. Now, Lin could also reach that level. He kept moving forward. Finally, at the exit, he felt the world spinning. This was the power of random teleportation. And Lin wasn't going to allow himself to be teleported to a random location, and he immediately chose a location where the energy was the most chaotic and the ripples of the heavenly Tao were the strongest. If the heavenly light goddess wanted to obtain the incomplete sword of the heavenly Tao, she would definitely have to go to the location where the ripples of the heavenly Tao were the strongest. That was the most convenient place to sense and use the heavens. And Lin felt the space between the two realms fluctuate violently. In the next instant, Lin discovered that he had arrived at an extremely spacious place. There was also a boundless starry sky above his head. This was a black continent that stretched as far as the eye could see. However, there were all sorts of strange, glowing plants growing on it. They were all beautiful and full of vitality. Most importantly, the vital energy here was extremely rich, making it an excellent cultivation environment. In terms of vital energy density alone, this place was even denser than places like the 4-9 Immortal Sect and the Celestial Court. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was a holy land for cultivation. A world that's on the verge of destruction actually has such a good place for cultivation? An expression of astonishment appeared on Lin's face. He continued to maintain his return to void intermediate stage cultivation base as he began to search for clues in this place. What would the heavenly light goddess do to refine the incomplete sword of the heavenly Tao? How would she refine the weapon? What materials would she use? What is the nature of the weapon? Lin analyzed the situation to himself as he walked. He walked very slowly, covering a distance of several dozen kilometers with each step. However, this also allowed him to sense this world in detail. This place was the place where the heavenly Tao was severely destroyed. The sky was blasted through, revealing the endless starry sky outside. The starry sky was so clear that it made people feel that what they saw was fake. However, Lin knew that the starry sky outside was real. The reason why they were so clear was because this place used to be the center of the boundless universe. When starlight shone here, it would cause the heavenly Tao to resonate and amplify it, so it became especially conspicuous. It was precisely because this was the place where the destruction of the heavens Tao was the most severe that there were especially many dangerous places and places of death here. The slightest carelessness would cause one to be swallowed by the chaotic turbulence and be obliterated by this terrifying force. Just as he was thinking about this, a gust of green wind blew furiously. The surrounding rocks and void were torn apart and devoured by this gust of wind, revealing the black and white chaos within. Pada! Lin stopped in his tracks, and a white light wall instantly appeared in front of him, blocking the howling wind. This wind is imbued with the power of laws, and it feels like it's even more terrifying than a full-powered attack from a return-to-void stage mighty figure. How could there be so many strange glowing plants in a place where even the wind could kill someone? Isn't this a little too unusual? Lin knew that chaos and destruction of laws were a hallmark of the destruction of a world, so he didn't find this strange. What was strange was that there were plants in a place like this. Is this what the destruction of a world looks like? Chaotic turbulence, formless killing laws, starry sky, aurora, and all types of violent energy. Lin continued onward, and it didn't take long for him to enter a few dangerous places of different elements. However, all of them were destroyed by his violent method. Wait, what's up ahead? Lin suddenly saw a silvery white light barrier up ahead, which enshrouded an extremely vast area like an eggshell. He approached the light barrier and saw an extremely grand white city. There were all types of living beings active within the city. All of their auras were extremely powerful, and they were all in a special state. They seemed to be living beings, but at the same time, they didn't seem to be living beings. They seemed to exist, but at the same time, they didn't seem to exist. Lin could see their voices and smiles as he looked at them. He could see that they were either chatting or playing around. However, once his gaze shifted, it was as if they completely disappeared. It was as if everything was empty and didn't exist. Lin was quite surprised. It was exactly because of this special state that they were in that they were able to blend in with the environment of this world. He had a feeling that even if the protective light barrier was gone, the living beings in the city would still be able to survive. What the hell? If it weren't for the fact that I've mastered the heavenly Tao and can sense the traces of living beings, I would probably be frightened by this scene. When the entire boundless world is heading toward destruction, all living beings will either perish or struggle to evolve and adapt to the environment. This can be said to be a miracle of life forced by the destruction of the world. Unlin walked toward the pure white light barrier, as if he had discovered a new continent. The pure white light barrier detected Unlin's aura and was just about to retaliate when Unlin's state suddenly changed as well. He entered a state where his existence and non-existence were fused together. The pure white light barrier was instantly confused. It seemed like it couldn't tell whether Unlin was one of its own. At this moment, Unlin had already barged into the light barrier. Then, he seemed to have disappeared into thin air, disappearing from its perception. Phew! This is the interior of the light barrier? What a peaceful environment! There's no chaos and destruction like the outside world. Unlin saw the living beings coming and going inside. They were of different shapes and sizes, but they were able to live together in a friendly and harmonious manner. There were at least hundreds of different races in this city. Unlin was very familiar with some of them, but there were also some that he was very unfamiliar with. They were all living in this extremely huge city in a special state. Some of the living beings even had bright and beautiful smiles on their faces. Little brother, you look very unfamiliar. Which region are you from? At this moment, a beautiful woman in revealing clothes walked over leisurely and asked with a smile. As she spoke, she even flirtatiously slapped a round fan on Unlin's butt. Which region? I'm from this region. Unlin, who hadn't been flirted with for a long time, instinctively revealed a harmless smile. This region? Haha, don't lie to me. I've lived here for tens of thousands of years and know tens of thousands of humans, but I've never seen you before. The woman raised her eyebrows, and the corners of her mouth curled up into an enchanting smile. She lifted Unlin's chin with her slender fingers and moved her pretty face closer. Her eyes seemed to be able to charm souls. She said, "Tell me the truth. Did you escape from another region? Don't worry, it's okay to tell the truth. Even if you don't have an identity, you can follow me. I can protect you." Unlin was shocked. She was doing this on the street? Were the people here so open-minded? Oh, Sister Hong is flirting with a little boy again? Don't tell me you're trying to trick him into going to your red ink workshop again? Ha ha ha, this young man looks quite handsome. Maybe he can be a small hostess. The living beings on the side of the road laughed loudly as they watched the commotion. Chapter 2209. As the crowd roared with laughter, they were actually reminding Unlin. Unlin smiled and nodded at the passers-by. It seemed that these people were quite kind-hearted. Of course, Sister Hong was an exception. Sister Hong was not angry when she was exposed by the passers-by. It was as if she was not doing anything shameful, and she continued to try to win over Unlin enthusiastically. Don't listen to their nonsense. We are doing serious business. Sister Hong looked at Unlin's face. Even though she had seen countless people, she was still a little absent-minded. Although Unlin was not extremely handsome, he had an indescribable temperament under his handsome face. That temperament inexplicably made people feel calm and comfortable. What was the most important thing in this era? Temperament was the most important thing. With Unlin's qualifications, it was definitely not a problem for him to be a small star. In Red Ink Workshop, a good man was equally popular as a good woman. Big sister, these passers-by have already told me what you do there. Why are you still pulling me? I don't sell my body. Unlin refused with a serious expression. Oh, how can that be considered selling your body? The beautiful woman waved her fan, stirring up waves of fragrance. She smiled and said, You just fell in love with some female customers at first sight, had a good talk, and then had a night of uncontrollable love. In the end, they felt that you couldn't do it. After thinking about it, they gave you a breakup fee. That's all. And Lin was immediately angry when he heard this. Are you talking like a human? What do you mean by they felt that I couldn't do it? Be more respectful when you speak. Sister Hong's smile became wider. Oh, you say you can do it, but you don't have any evidence. Please come to Red Ink Workshop to find your fate and prove yourself. So this is also a trick. And Lin was so angry that he twitched his mouth. Unfortunately, provocation doesn't work on me in this world. Only the system had the ability to threaten his little brother. Only the system had the right to question his little brother. Nobody else could. Little brother, are you really not going to consider it? You can get the best treatment and development if you come to Red Ink Workshop. Also, we don't only do love affairs. We are all artists. Do you understand? Also, you have to know that Red Ink Workshop also has a famous book collection and art library in the Holy Land of Taichu. You can also obtain valuable knowledge and experience and learn the top culture and art there. The girls and the young men there are all well-mannered and well-mannered. It is definitely a paradise on earth. Sister Hong further persuaded. And Lin was originally very angry, but after hearing the book collection, he suddenly had an idea and he nodded. This was exactly what the Holy Land of the Holy wanted to say. He had no idea what the Heavenly Light Goddess was going to do or what she was going to do. All he knew was that the Heavenly Light Goddess was most likely going to cause trouble in this region. If he did, he God, he Liangjia, he Lin, he. I knew Big Brother was a wise and beautiful person. Sister Hong was extremely happy, and she hooked her arms around Lin's and led him toward the Red Ink Workshop. By the way, little brother, I haven't asked your name yet. Just call me Lou DeBeo. Oh, it's Big Brother DeBeo. What a cute name. That's what other people say. Red Ink Workshop was located in the center of the 8th district. It was a giant mahogany pavilion with 99 floors. It was very magnificent, with dragons and phoenixes carved on it. Each corner had a different carving feature, and it perfectly harmonized with the rest of the building. It could be said to have reached the pinnacle of architectural art. And Lin originally thought that Red Ink Workshop was just a vulgar place for love affairs and money, but after seeing the building in front of him, he immediately changed his mind. This building was obviously extraordinary. When he walked to the gate of Red Ink Workshop, he saw not only human beings going in and out, but other races were also very enthusiastic about this place. It seemed to be a treasure land for all races. And Lin also found something interesting. Most of the creatures who entered were a little tired and depressed, but after coming out, they were all full of joy, as if they had ushered in the peak of their lives. Was there something inside that was especially beneficial to these creatures? And Lin walked into the bustling Red Ink Workshop. Immediately, he heard a very pleasant song. The song seemed to have the effect of cleansing one's soul, making one's whole body sublimate. Countless creatures who entered Red Ink Workshop showed an expression of extreme enjoyment. And Lin had heard a lot of celestial music, so he didn't find it strange, but he still forced an expression of enjoyment. It's beautiful, right? This is sung by one of the top singers in our Red Ink Workshop, Lu Qin. She is the best singer in the Light Feather Clan, but she only sells her skills, not her body. As she said this, Sister Hong's eyes fluttered and she looked at Lin seductively. It's not impossible for you to be like her, but you have to have a skill. Lin smiled but didn't say anything. Not to mention a skill, he was proficient in all kinds of martial arts. Once his realm increased, everything would be easy for him. Sister Hong, I have a skill, Lin said with a smile. Oh? Tell me about it. Sister Hong's interest was piqued. Based on his temperament alone, this man was qualified to be the top singer. If he had a skill, it wouldn't be a problem to groom him as the top singer of Red Ink Workshop. I can cook, Unlin said proudly. Sister Hong. Our kitchen is full of chefs, Sister Hong said after holding it in for a long time. Do you look down on cooking? I am. Okay, Sister Hong will take you to do a physical examination first. Before Unlin could finish his sentence, he was dragged to do a physical examination by Sister Hong. This was also a rule of Red Ink Workshop. It was a kind of identity check, and all newcomers had to go through this procedure. Unlin could even fool the heavens, so this was a piece of cake for him. He pretended to be an ordinary person who had lost part of his memory and successfully got away with it. Then, he mingled with his brothers and sisters for an hour. Next, Ing Bao will take you to visit Red Ink Workshop and learn how to receive customers, Sister Hong said with a smile. Big brother Debeo, let's go. Ing Bao was a petite girl with fair skin. She pulled Unlin's hand and walked around Red Ink Workshop happily. Red Ink Workshop had 99 floors. Among them, 66 floors were open to the public and provided entertainment for the beings of the major races. However, there were 33 floors that were not open to the public. That was where the brothers and sisters lived and where all kinds of books and artworks were placed. Unlin could be considered a member of Red Ink Workshop, so he could naturally go to the areas above the 66th floor. Ing Bao introduced everything to Unlin very dutifully. She always felt that Unlin had an aura that she liked and yearned for. This made her choose to get close to Unlin involuntarily. Before long, Unlin finally arrived at Red Ink Workshop's book collection pavilion. Floors 91 to 99 were the territory of the book collection pavilion. It was called the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Chapter 22:10. This is the Heavenly Book Pavilion of the Red Ink Workshop. It is one of the top 10 pavilions in the Holy Land of Taichu. The books in it cover astronomy, history, Taoist spells, immortal spells, and the wisdom of all races. It can be said to be the most sacred place in the Holy Land of Taichu. Ing Bao's face was full of reverence and yearning as she introduced the pavilion in front of her. The Heavenly Book Pavilion was an independent pavilion that stood on top of the Red Ink Workshop. It was equivalent to Unlin occupying the top of the Red Ink Workshop. The pavilion had flattened the top of the building and built a pavilion in the center. Then let's go in and have a look, Unlin said excitedly. No. Hearing this, Ing Bao hurriedly waved her little hand. Not everyone can enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. You are not qualified yet. Unlin was taken aback. I am not qualified? Didn't Sister Hong say that this place has the richest collection of books? Yes, it is indeed the richest collection of books. But it's just hidden, not for you to read, Ing Bao said casually. Unlin drew a sharp intake of breath. Why did he join the Red Ink Workshop? It was to read books, but now he found out that this damn Sister Hong was still tricking him. Unlin thought for a moment and asked with a gentle smile, Then what do I need to do to be qualified to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion? He looked at the two white-haired old men guarding the door. They turned out to be Tao integration stage cultivators. He wondered how they were able to avoid the backlash of heaven and earth by maintaining this cultivation base. Ing Bao doesn't know. Ing Bao doesn't have the qualification either. I heard that if you become one of the top performers in the Red Ink Workshop, you will have the opportunity to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Unlin was completely amused by this. I'm going to read a book, and I'm going to be the star? I, the Heavenly Darkness Goddess, the war god of the Tai Chu continent, have to suffer like this? Are you forcing me to use violence? Oh, by the way, I have to remind you not to force your way into the Heavenly Book Pavilion. There is a very terrifying restriction there, Ing Bao reminded him again. Oh. Unlin nodded, but he didn't think so. What rubbish restriction. As long as he undid the seal in his body, he would be able to break it in minute. Seeing Unlin's nonchalant expression, Ing Bao pouted. Don't take it to heart. You have to know that there was a woman who claimed to be the Heavenly Light Goddess from the second region yesterday. She tried to force her way into the heavenly tone pavilion over there. Then, she was directly judged by the restrictions and turned into dust. Boom. This sentence was like a thunderclap, and Lin was dumbfounded. What did you say? Heavenly light goddess? Yes, Brother DeBeo, do you know her? Ing Bao asked curiously. No. I don't know him. It's just that I didn't expect that someone would dare to call himself a god. What an arrogant tone. And Lin hurriedly suppressed the raging waves in his heart. Oh, you don't say. The title of Kami suits her quite well. She's so powerful that she defeated 2 undefeatable gatekeepers. But in the end, she was still reduced to ashes by the invincible restriction left by the ancestors. There's nothing we can do about it. Ing Bao's beautiful eyes revealed a lot of amazement when she mentioned this extraordinary person. And Lin's shock was far more intense than the shock on his face. The heavenly light goddess really came here? And she barged into the heavenly book pavilion? Most importantly, she was reduced to ashes by the restriction of the heavenly book pavilion? And Lin knew the true strength of the heavenly light goddess. He knew that she wouldn't be killed so easily. However, the restriction of the heavenly book pavilion was able to repel the heavenly light goddess, which was already very powerful. It seemed that the holy land of Taichu was not simple. It seemed that he couldn't be too reckless, and Lin was shocked, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. His efforts were not in vain. At least he was sure that the broken sword of the heavenly Tao was related to the heavenly book pavilion. The heavenly light goddess's target was the heavenly book pavilion. Originally, he just wanted to use the heavenly book pavilion to better understand this world. Now, the heavenly book pavilion was the target of the heavenly light goddess, which saved him the trouble of looking for it. Big Brother DeBeo, let's go. We can just watch the heavenly book pavilion from afar. Ing Bao tugged on An Lin's sleeve and said softly, And Lin nodded and asked, By the way, Ing Bao, what's the fastest way to become the top girl of the Red Ink Workshop? Well, our Red Ink Workshop has a voting event every night. The customers can vote for the most popular brothers and girls. When the number of votes you get is more than twice the number of votes of the most popular girls, you can directly be promoted to the top girl of the Red Ink Workshop. This is very difficult. It has been hundreds of years since someone has become the top girl in this way. Ing Bao looked at An Lin's handsome face and blushed slightly. She said softly, Big Brother DeBeo, you are quite good-looking. Even if you do it step by step, it won't take long for you to become the top girl. An Lin shook his head secretly. He was naturally confident that he could become the top girl step by step, but he didn't have much time left. He only had 3 days. How could he have the time to waste with her here? He had to achieve this goal as soon as possible. The top girl of the Red Ink Workshop. I'm definitely going to be the top girl. Let's go. I have to prepare. An Lin caressed Ing Bao's head and smiled. Okay, let's go learn how to receive customers. I'm not learning this. Then what do you want to learn? I want to learn how to become the top girl of the Red Ink Workshop in 1 day. Ing Bao felt that An Lin was a little arrogant. Did it mean that he could be arrogant unscrupulously because others liked his looks? Ing Bao was unhappy. She pouted and said, Big Brother DeBeo, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You haven't been beaten by the Red Ink Workshop. An Lin pinched the girl's nose and said with a smile, You haven't been beaten by the Red Ink Workshop either. Ing Bao was Sister Hong's daughter. She had connections and didn't need to receive customers. She was in her 60s. At most, she could guide newcomers and show off. Ing Bao shook off An Lin's hand and said with a snort, Although I haven't been beaten, I have more experience than you. Come on, don't be so long-winded. Let's study how to become the top girl tonight. An Lin took Ing Bao's little hand and walked toward the training room. The training room of the Red Ink Workshop was located from the 70th to the 72nd floor. It was the place where performers rehearsed to entertain the customers. Because of his outstanding appearance and temperament, and Lin came to the gold medal training room on the 72nd floor. There were several mentors in charge of screening and providing suggestions. Hello, mentors. I'm Lou DeBeo, a trainee who has been training for a day. I'm good at cooking, dancing, and acting cool. And Lin was dressed in a fluttering white Taoist robe. He held a black frying pan and made a pose in front of the gold medal mentors. Oh, not bad. He looks very stylish. The eyes of the mentors lit up slightly. They gave Lin a look that said, "Please start your performance." Chapter 22:11. The music began to play. This was an extremely moving piece of music. And Lin also began to perform a stir-frying dance with his frying pan amidst the music. His smooth dance movements, his indescribable charisma, and his flashing frying pan all lit up the eyes of the golden teachers. And Lin's frying pan danced as if there was an exceptional delicacy within it, but it wasn't for anyone to eat. This greatly whetted the appetites of the golden teachers, and they couldn't help but admire Lin's beautiful dance. It could be said that this was a double whammy of adoration and disdain, and all of the golden teachers were extremely elated. Suddenly, Lin tossed his frying pan into the air. The style of the music suddenly changed. "Because you smell too good. Because you smell too good." Lin began to sing and dance. All of the golden teachers felt as if they had been struck by lightning, and they were all rooted to the spot. What the hell? Because you smell too good, beely beely plop, because you smell too good, beely beely plop, and Lin began to perform an extremely seductive dance. All of the golden teachers were dumbstruck for a moment before finally comprehending the beauty of Lin's dance. This voice, this melody, this is a true cooking dance. A male true demon tribe cultivator with a demonic horn on his head exclaimed in shock. Because you smell too good, and because you smell too good, perhaps the frying pan he just threw away was a chicken. Because you smell too good, he couldn't bear to part with you, so he could only throw it away. There's some kind of Tao realm philosophy behind this. A golden teacher murmured to himself. I don't know why, but I was immediately intoxicated by Lou DeBeo's singing and dancing. I even felt hungry. This is definitely an exceptional dance. A Light Wing clan female exclaimed with excitement in her eyes. Because you smell too good, beely beely, plop plop. And Lin's dance stopped at the end of the music, and he struck another pose. After a brief silence, all of the golden teachers stood up and applauded Lin. Clap clap clap. Amazing! Wonderful! It's been a long time since I've seen such a refreshing dance. Our red ink workshop has picked up a treasure this time. Passed with full marks. Passed with full marks. Passed with full marks. All the ACE instructors gave him the highest evaluation. Lou DeBeo, you can train while you work. There will be a special stage for you tonight. I hope you can train well. Thank you, instructors, Lin replied politely. Lou DeBeo, what are your dreams? Daphne from the Lightwing clan asked. My dream is to become the star of Red Ink Workshop as soon as possible, Lin said honestly. All the mentors exclaimed in surprise. What a great dream! You'll definitely be the star of the show in the near future. Lin listened to his tutor's words with a smile on his face. Of course he knew it was in the near future, because it was tonight. He wanted to conquer the audience through his cooking dance. Lin's debut assessment was over. When he walked out, Bao was so shocked that her jaw almost dropped when she found out that there was a special stage for him on his first night. Brother DeBeo, you're so amazing. The mentors think so highly of you? Haha, do you remember what I said before? Tonight. A faint smile appeared on Lin's face as he looked at the dumbstruck woman before him. Bao heard Lin's words and took a deep breath. Could it be that Lou DeBeo was serious? No, even if he was so highly regarded by the mentors, it was impossible for him to become the star of the show in one night. The star of the show was not a nobody. Not only were they talented, but they also had countless hardcore fans. It was impossible to surpass them in terms of spending, not to mention spending twice as much, and Lin was led by the mentors into a beautiful training room. There were a few handsome and beautiful trainees training inside. Let me introduce you. This is Lou DeBeo. I hope you can get along well with him, Daphne said with a smile. The training room was filled with enthusiastic cheers. Daphne smiled gently at Lin and said, "There are no flaws in your dance. Repeat it in the afternoon and try to perform well on the exclusive stage tonight." Exclusive stage? Oh my God, this trainee just came in and already has an exclusive stage. That's amazing. How did he do it? All the trainees looked at Lin enviously as if they wanted to see something special from Lin. After Daphne left, a group of handsome guys and girls swarmed over. "Lou DeBeo, are you really a trainee? Why are you so amazing? I'm Lin May, the singer. I'm Lee Buffon, the mistress killer. What song are you going to perform tonight? Are you really a newcomer? Are you a top performer from another place?" One question after another was thrown at Lin, yet Lin didn't seem annoyed at all. He patiently answered the trainees' questions, appearing extremely amiable and approachable. This also earned him a good impression from the trainees and the nameplate. Trainees were creatures who rarely or never performed. The top performers were creatures who often performed and had a certain reputation in Red Ink Workshop. The top performers were naturally the pillars of Red Ink Workshop. They were the kind of people who had hundreds of followers wherever they went. There were only 19 top performers in the entire Red Ink Workshop. It was up to them whether they wanted to perform or not, so sometimes there would be no top performer for a whole day. The top performers had their own training room, so Lin could not see them. But Lin knew that those top performers were his real opponent. He hoped that there would be a top performer who wanted to perform tonight. Otherwise, he would not have a chance to be a top performer, spending more than twice as many votes as the top performer. This difficulty, TSK, and Lin suddenly became a little excited. Get out of the way, get out of the way. Brother Jean is coming. The crowd was forcibly pushed aside by a few people. An extremely strong and handsome man with a beard walked over slowly with a soul smoke in his mouth. He was surrounded by a few equally good-looking brand-name men. Are you the trainee who got an exclusive performance as soon as he joined Red Ink Workshop? The man who was called Brother Jean looked down at Lin and said with a sneer, "You're just a pretty boy. What can you do?" In the face of this man's sarcasm, the warm and friendly trainees did not dare to speak up for Lin. Obviously, they were afraid of Brother Jean. At this time, a girl who looked pure but had a proud face next to Brother Jean crossed her arms in front of her chest and said with a smile, "You're Lou DeBeo, right? Why don't you greet him? Jean Feihong is the top performer in Red Ink Workshop. He is very interested in you and wants to recruit you as his follower." Chapter 22:12. Lin was a little confused. He had always been the one to accept others as his underling. Now he was going to be someone else's underling? Or the underling of this coquettish man in front of him? What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bow. It's your honor to be chosen by our boss. A nameplate next to Brother Jean urged. Brother Jean just stood there with a slight smile on his face. Lin didn't expect to be involved in such a strange matter so soon. At this time, there were also many trainees around him urging him to lower his head. "DeBeo, hurry up and bow. It's just being Brother Jin's underling. Don't you see that many nameplates are also Brother Jin's underlings? Being Brother Jin's underling is equivalent to having a big backer. That's right, this is something that we can only be envious of, so please don't do anything irrational." Some of the students were afraid that Lin would do something reckless due to his youthful impulsiveness, and they all tried to dissuade him. Of course, Lin wouldn't do anything too outrageous. He turned to a mermaid trainee next to him and said, "Brother Jean has no right to cancel my stage performance tonight." The mermaid trainee was stunned for a moment and instinctively shook her head. Although Brother Jean has a lot of power, He doesn't have the right to interfere with the decisions of the ace teachers. Hey, why are you still standing here? Don't be so ungrateful. Underlings should act like underlings. I'm afraid you don't know what it means to be favored by Brother Jean, do you? The girl with a pure look said impatiently. Jean Feihong also had an impatient look on his face. With his status, he was already giving face to Liu Debao by asking him to be his underling. Why was this Liu Debao so insensible now? Are you done? And Lin asked. What? Jean Feihong asked for the first time. If you're done, then get lost. I don't have time to play house with you. And Lin shrugged. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. Everyone was dumbfounded. Jean Feihong's face twitched imperceptibly. Oh my God! He actually told Brother Jean to get lost? Is he crazy? No one had expected that Lin would dare to talk back to Brother Jean. Moreover, he even asked Brother Jean to get lost. Brother Jean had the highest status among the famous artists. Liu Debao, do you want to die? Jean Feihong's face darkened. You want me to scram? Have you thought about the consequences of your words? Lin looked at the man in front of him impatiently. You want to be my boss? Don't be a toad lusting after swan meat. Even if you want to be my grandson, I might not accept you. Let me make it clear, in my eyes you are a piece of trash. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. If there's nothing else, then scram. Don't waste my time. A series of critical strikes exploded in the training room like thunder. All the celebrities were dumbfounded. This Lin in front of him was really a lunatic. His first impression of him was that of an elegant young master, but now he had become a lunatic who dared to curse at Jean Feihong. He was simply courting death. Jean Feihong was stunned by the scolding. His underlings had already taken the lead in cursing. Liu Debao, are you King tired of living? How dare you provoke Brother Jean? Don't you understand your situation? I'm telling you, you're finished. Your entire career as an artist is over. A few of the hot-tempered underlings could not help but step forward and swing their fists, wanting to beat up Lin. However, they were suddenly stopped by Jean Feihong. Brother Jean, don't stop me. Let me beat him up. What an arrogant kid. He should be taught a lesson. A few hot-tempered trainees said angrily. Don't worry, it's just a mad dog barking. We don't need to fight here. The haze on Jean Feihong's face was swept away. Instead, he showed a faint smile, turned around and said, Let's go. Tonight is the night of red ink. There will be a lot of top stars performing here. Let's talk about it after tonight. As he spoke, he suddenly gave Lin a meaningful look and said with a meaningful smile, I hope someone won't be so frightened by the superb skills of the top stars that he can't even dance. Brother Jean left under everyone's gaze. The others in the training room had not come to their senses yet. Brother Jean left just like that? Are you stupid? With Brother Jin's temper, will he easily spare Liu Debao? He didn't deal with Liu Debao today for the sake of the mentors. He's waiting for an opportunity. If Liu Debao fails in tonight's performance and disappoints the mentors, then Brother Jean has 100 ways to make Liu Debao leave Red Ink Workshop, or even make him wish he was dead. Have you forgotten how miserable the fate of those artists who went against Brother Jean was? The artists couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts when they thought of the tragic experiences of those artists. Some trainees who had intended to build a good relationship with Lin stayed away from him, for fear of being implicated by Brother Jin's anger. In this way, Lin, who had been tired of dealing with them, suddenly became free. Lin was also happy to see this. He was too lazy to manage these useless social activities. Anyway, after tonight, he would be the most popular guy in Red Ink Workshop, and he didn't care about everything in front of him at all. As for Jean Hongfei's hostility, which frightened countless people, in his eyes, it was even more ridiculous and insignificant. Perhaps only Jean Hongfei thought of him as an enemy. But what is the Red Ink Night that Jean Hongfei mentioned? Lin stroked his chin and muttered to himself thoughtfully. The Red Ink Night is the night when Red Ink Workshop holds large-scale activities. Many prominent figures from the 8th District and even the neighboring districts will come to watch the performance. Our Red Ink Workshop will also send at least 3 top stars to perform on the spot. It can be said to be a gathering of stars and a night of stars. A cold voice suddenly sounded beside Enlin. Enlin turned his head and found that it was a dragon lady in a white robe with a cold face. He was a little surprised that there was still a creature who dared to approach him now. The dragon lady glanced at Enlin indifferently and said, "You have offended Jean Feihong. If your performance tonight is good, it will be fine. If the performance is ruined, then I advise you to leave here immediately and run as far away as you can." This was a kind of advice. Even though Enlin was very arrogant, the dragon lady's original intention was for his own good. He naturally nodded politely and said with a smile, "Thank you." Seeing that Enlin didn't seem to be nervous at all, the dragon lady in a white robe snorted and walked away proudly, too lazy to talk to Enlin. Enlin smiled and didn't care. He continued to play with all kinds of equipment in the corner. Soon, the night began to fall. The grandest performance in the 8th District of the Holy Land of Taichu had begun. Chapter 22:13. The daytime system of the light barrier began to disappear. Infinite stars began to descend from the night sky. Ancient lanterns hung on every floor of the 99-story Red Ink Shop, and its interior was suffused with all kinds of colors. It was brightly lit, and it was like a tower shining with dreamy colors that stood eternally in the dilapidated world. The 33rd to 38th floors of the Red Ink Workshop protruded outward. They were round and not out of place. Inside, there was a huge stage and countless seats for the audience. It could hold 60,000 people. The Red Ink Night was held on these floors. At this moment, the place was already full of people. Prominent figures had arrived one by one, and their fanatical fans were already in their seat. Even the regular customers who often spent their nights in the Red Ink Workshop were not looking for their old lovers. Instead, they were waiting in their seat. The Red Ink Night was the most famous event in the 8th District. It was hard to get a ticket. Most of the people who could come were the upper echelons of the 8th District. Of course, their behavior was no different from normal fanatical fans. Some of the top performers were so charismatic that even mighty figures would fall head over heels for them. Did you hear? Yun Xian from the Red Ink Workshop is going to perform tonight. Ah, really? I love to hear her sing. I heard that the Yangluan Dance Empress is going to perform too. Oh my god. My Yang is the best in the world. He has to be the Flower Queen tonight. Some fangirls had already lost their voices and screamed. The audience was basically there for the top performers. As for the performances of the other performers, there was very little discussion. They were all supporting characters who existed to serve as a foil to the top performers. Backstage, inside a window, Enlin was a little dazed as he looked at the crowd outside. How long had it been since he last performed on stage? He remembered that the last time he performed was when he teamed up with Su Xiaolan. Did you see that? Although you have a chance to go on stage, that's all. Don't you know how terrifying your opponents are? Almost all of the audience members are die-hard fans of the A-listers, and there are more than 3 A-listers participating in tonight's performances. Do you think you have the ability to make all of those die-hard fans vote for you? Ying Bao stood beside Enlin in a purple dress and spoke in a mature manner. You don't trust me that much? Enlin turned to look at the girl beside him. The girl looked at Enlin, and when she saw the man's handsome face and the deep eyes that seemed to contain the starry sky, her pretty face blushed slightly, and her aura suddenly weakened a little. She said in a low voice, I believe that you can become the star, but not now. Then how about we make a bet? Enlin said with interest. What are we betting on? Ying Bao was stunned. If I'm going to be the number 1 tonight, you have to do something for me. If I can't become the number 1, I promise to do one thing for you. All right. Ing Bao agreed without hesitation. How could she miss such a free opportunity? Anyway, Liu Debao would soon know how naive his thoughts were. At this moment, Mentor Daphne was already striding over. Debao, how are your preparations? Everything went well, teacher. Yes. Daphne smiled gently. Take this as an experience. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, but don't embarrass yourself too much. After all, the mayors of the 8th, 3rd, and 6th districts are sitting on the stage. Even the mayors of other districts are here. Ing Bao exclaimed. Anlin had already learned from their chats that the Holy Land of Taichu was divided into 10 districts, each of which had about a few million living beings, and the mayors were the supreme rulers. The 10 districts were managed separately, and ordinary living beings couldn't interact with each other, but this obviously didn't apply to the higher-ups of the districts. The Holy Land of Taichu had a lot of secrets. Anlin was very interested in the mayors. The living beings of the Holy Land of Taichu were trapped in the light barrier, and they needed the necessary entertainment to calm their minds, so the celebrities here all had very high status. It was worth mentioning that the audience here all exuded extremely powerful energy fluctuations. Even a passerby had a cultivation base of the pinnacle stage of the Tao body stage. As for the higher-ups of the districts and all kinds of famous celebrities, spirit nurturing stage and soul formation stage cultivators could be seen everywhere, and there were also many return to void stage cultivators, and there was not a single mortal living being here without a cultivation base. It was probably impossible to survive in this world without a cultivation base. Suddenly, a burst of extremely enthusiastic cheers rang out. An incomparably beautiful song began to reverberate in the red ink workshop. A woman slowly descended from the air to the center of the stage. Her white dress was otherworldly, and she fluttered like a lotus. Her beautiful and refreshing voice began to reverberate, and it was cold yet filled with infinite yearning. This is... Anlin's eyes widened. Wasn't this the dragon maiden in white who had explained to him about the red ink night? Her name is Su Chan, and she is a very famous singer in our red ink workshop. In terms of strength, she is second only to Jean Feihong. What do you think? Are you amazed by her voice? Ing Bao looked at Anlin, as if she wanted to see his arrogance being crushed. It's quite nice. Anlin nodded with a relaxed expression. In terms of singing alone, the other party was indeed very good, even better than the lead singers of some of the fairy bands in the Celestial Court. She was basically on the same level as the 7 fairies, but this level was still not at the level of a top star. To be honest, he was a little surprised, but he wasn't very panicked. After all, Anlin also had his own trump card. At this moment, on a luxurious spectator stand, a fat man with big ears and dragon horns on his head revealed a benevolent smile. He looked to his side and said with a smile, "Ha ha ha, son, look at this Su-chan. Not bad, right?" A similarly fat man at the side kept nodding, his eyes full of passion. "Father, this dragon maiden is really great. She's beautiful, and her voice is also very pleasant. I want to take her as my concubine. I want to take her as my concubine." "Okay. I'll just tell the Red Emperor later." The fat man smiled and nodded. He was the mayor of the 6th district, the Dragon Emperor. Although the status of artists in the district was very high, Su-chan was not the top star. He believed that the Red Emperor would not reject this request. Soon, Su-chan's performance ended, and thunderous applause sounded. Many creatures even shouted Su-chan's name loudly. Obviously, her popularity was extremely high, and she was already very close to being the top star. This could be seen from the fact that Red Ink Workshop used her as the opening performance. Then, she left the stage. 6 beautiful Fox Clan brands appeared on the stage together, presenting a sexy and hot dance. All of this pushed Red Ink Workshop to another climax. After the hot dance, a famous artist painted on the spot, bringing Red Ink Workshop into a wonderful landscape painting realm. The scene inside contained an extremely deep painting realm. After that, there were even two fat men who went on stage to perform a comedy theater. Their jokes were so advanced that even Lin, who was very amused, could not help but laugh. Lin originally thought that Red Ink Workshop was a more advanced place of romance. However, after witnessing a series of performances, he realized that he was wrong. There was romance, but he also saw art here. And it was an art that was very accomplished. It could be said that none of the famous artists who went on stage tonight were easy to deal with. It seemed that the challenge was not small. Just as he was feeling emotional, the scene suddenly erupted with unimaginable cheers and screams. Even the three district mayors looked expectant. Luanyang! Luanyang! Luanyang Dance Empress! The sound converged into a wave, as if it was going to collapse the entire Red Ink Workshop. And Lin became alert. He knew that the top star was about to appear.